Can't you explain it to me? How can I understand it if you don't tell me? Hearing the boss's impatient tone, the younger brother muttered in a low voice. And the organization clearly said that it only needs to find out if the Silver Moon Knight Su-Che and Tony Stark have made any big moves. As a result, that fellow Alan West took the initiative to give Su-Che and Tony Stark hallucinogens? Who is the Silver Moon Knight? That is the most powerful Avenger on Earth. Even the outrageously powerful organization behind us dare not be tough. What does that idiot Alan West think? How dare he provoke you? It seemed that the more he talked, the more angry he became. The younger brother suddenly raised his head, but looked at the expressionless face of the boss. But he bowed his head again, and continued to read the comic about Batman that God still gave him. While flipping through the pages, he muttered in a low voice. I know that you, boss, have a good relationship with Alan West, but in order to save him and make such a big fuss, once the organization finds out that we are responsible, maybe how will we be punished? What if we get the blood of that venerable Silver Moon Knight? Maybe the organization is not interested in the blood of the Silver Moon Knight. And the goal of the organization is obviously Silver Moon Knight and Iron Man, but this time, Captain Rogers was involved again. Sigh. Why do I feel that the more we provoke the more enemies? This is not good, if it continues like this. Shut up. Faced with the chattering younger brother's thoughts, the boss couldn't bear it, just wanted to pick up the remote control and smash the younger brother's head. But as soon as he raised his hand, he seemed to think of something. After sighing, he let it go again helplessly. My younger brother was not like this before. At the beginning, the organization wanted to select people for the experiment, and that kind of drug was used for the experiment before it was formed. The person who was originally selected by the organization was himself, but because the risk of the experiment was too high, even the people who did the experiment before all died on the operating table. Because this little brother was worried about himself, he took the initiative to complete the experiment for himself. According to the experimenters, his little brother's experiment was considered a semi-success. Although because of this experiment, he obtained the ability beyond ordinary people, able to control other people's thoughts. But the price is that the original height of 1.8 meters has shrunk to less than 1.6 meters. The whole person also became chattering uncontrollably. To be honest, I can't even imagine what kind of torture my loyal little brother has encountered on the operating table. It's just that, as long as you think of the screams that were so terrifying that you couldn't bear to hear them. Even if the younger brother becomes more talkative, he will get angry again. Also reluctant to punish him. After all, there are not many younger brothers who are so loyal to him. Thinking of this, the boss slowed down his tone. The reason why that Steve Rogers was involved is to muddy the water, and then use the frightening famine to make the whole of New York spontaneous. Once there is chaos in New York, the people in panic will riot. At that time, we will make a threat request, if the Silver Moon Knight does not agree. We will let the bombing continue. Once the news spreads, Silver Moon Knight will have to agree to our request. Otherwise, how much he is sought after now, how many people will be scolded in the future. As for Steve Rogers, hey, this guy who was injected with super soldier serum and woke up from sleep for 70 years, I want to follow the style of our organization. Certainly would not refuse to have his blood. Looking at the vows, a pair of advantages are in my boss. The younger brother scratched his head, then pointed to the TV and said, but boss, things don't seem to be developing according to your idea. Look. That Silver Moon Knight teamed up with Iron Man and the Captain of Magnesium Country. As soon as they appeared, the parade people immediately fell silent. Hearing what the younger brother said, the boss who was still lying on the sofa sat up all of a sudden. I saw that the crowd who had been shouting in the parade immediately fell silent after seeing these three people descending from the sky. And in the camera, the eyes of these people looking at the three superheroes are extremely hot. Wafa? Why are these three damned guys out now? Watching three people headed by Silver Moon Knight appear in the camera. The boss frowned instantly. This is different from what I planned. My threatening video, the video of threatening Su-Che and Steve by name has not been released yet. How did they show up so soon? Well, why don't the Avengers Alliance go out in case of major events? This doesn't match my chaos plan. However, there were only 23 bombings, and the Earth was not in ruins. Are the three of them so considerate? You must know that even when S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to destroy Hydra, the only members of the Avengers Alliance dispatched were Steve Rogers and Iron Man. Could it be that the 23 bombings planned by myself are more threatening than the original Hydra? This is not scientific. Moreover, the video of myself threatening has not been released yet, so no one should know about it except myself and my little brother. This matter is aimed at Silver Moon Knight and Magnesium Country Captain. So, why are the three of them showing up now? Before the boss could think about it, Su-Che's voice came out of the TV. Everyone who is watching the news in front of the camera, don't worry, our Avengers Alliance will solve this matter. The attackers of these bombings are nothing more than a group of cowards, a group of moles who only hide in dark corners and use the grief of ordinary people to satisfy their ugly desires. For them, our Avengers Alliance will never let them go. As he said that, Su Che looked at the camera with sharp eyes. Listen, people behind the scenes, if you really have the ability, then come to me. From now on behalf of the Avengers Alliance team, I will open up all the defenses of the Avengers Alliance base. €1. If you think the Avengers Alliance is too powerful, then I will evacuate everyone from the Avengers Alliance, and only I will stay at the Avengers Alliance base. You know who I am and where I live, and I'm waiting for you with the door open. If you are afraid, then immediately surrender. I only give you 3 days. 3 days later, if I don't hear the news that you didn't choose to surrender, then I will find you. At that time, on behalf of the Avengers, on behalf of the people who were killed and injured in the 23 bombings, I will let you know what punishment 10 from hell is. F*K. F*K. Watching the live TV news, that damned Silver Moon Knight Su Che issued a glaring letter of challenge. They even pointed directly at their own noses and said that they are a coward. The boss angrily picked up the remote control and smashed it on the TV. Crack. Zlala. There was a crackling electric current from the smashed TV, and then the screen went black. Seeing the appearance of the boss rage, the younger brother scratched his head. Isn't that the Silver Moon Knight who declared war on TV? What's there to be angry about? Besides, the Avengers Alliance is a positive character, and what we are secretly poking at is the villain. A positive person declares war like a villain, isn't that what it should be? Tisk. My boss is getting more and more bad-tempered now. He wanted to open his mouth several times to appease the boss, but the Silver Moon Knight only responded positively on behalf of the Avengers Alliance. But after thinking about it, this little brother, 593, still decided to keep his mouth shut. The boss of the province always says he has no brains. Ideas based on reading Batman comics and learning how Joker does things. I don't even think that the boss is so smart. This little brother definitely doesn't know why his boss is so angry. In fact, the reason is very simple, that is, the action of the boss was preempted by Su Che, the Avenger. Originally, according to his idea, he used the chaos to create panic, and then he posted the video online at an appropriate time. Ask Su Che and Steve Rogers to take out 2 tubes of their blood. And free Alan West, who was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. If they choose to refuse, then they will detonate the bomb hidden in the city next. With the panic of New Yorkers, Sue and Steve Rogers don't give in. As long as the blood of Su Che and Steve can be handed over to the organization for research, then the organization will not blame itself for saving Alan West without permission. But who would have thought that he hadn't posted videos on the internet, and hadn't poured all the dirty water on Su Che and Steve? As a result, the members of Avengers actually appeared on TV first, and declared war on themselves on TV. Nima, do Avengers members have such a keen sense of smell? Everyone knows how important it is to be first. I took the lead in posting the threat video online, and after the Avengers Alliance stood up, I posted the video online again. Whether it is the effect of threats or the effect of coercing the public to create panic, it must be different. Once the chaos is suppressed by the members of the Avengers Alliance, then I will definitely not be able to achieve my final goal. Thinking of this, the boss has a toothache. I snatched Batman's comics from my younger brother, and then started to flip through them quickly. Seeing the boss's actions, the younger brother seemed hesitant to speak. In the end, he couldn't hold back and said, "Boss, now is not the time to read comics. Oh. Do you want to see if there's any way to deal with the Avengers Alliance in the comics? Then how is that possible? Batman's comics are just comics, and there is still a big gap between them and reality. Boss. You always say that I have no brains, but I am actually smart. Boss. If you really want to imitate Joker's actions in the comics, you want to see if there is any countermeasure. Then why not just tie up the author of the Batman comics? However, I don't think it will be of much use even if it is tied. After all, we are Joker, but the Silver Moon Knight is not Bruce Wayne. He's more like the invincible Clark Kent, who can bask in the sun. What did you say?" Listening to the younger brother's words, the boss suddenly raised his head. "I said that if you want to read comics, it's better to tie up the writers of comics to give ideas, although this is actually not very useful. Even aliens can't beat Su Che." Seeing the boss questioning himself, the younger brother repeated his thoughts aside. "Not this sentence." He waved his hand and threw the comic in his hand aside. "You're right, Su Che is more like Superman Clark Kent, so to deal with Su Che, we have to use the method we deal with Superman." Looking at the thoughtful look of the boss, the younger brother blinked his eyes. I really want to ask the boss whether you were drinking too much today or have a fever. He raised his hand but put it down again. Well, I didn't dare to touch the boss's head, so I could only whisper. What is Superman going to do with it? We don't have kryptonite, and Silver Moon Knight is not a Kryptonian. We don't have kryptonite, but we have organization. Standing up without any hesitation, the boss picked up the phone and dialed directly. Watching the movement of the boss getting up and going to the window, the little boy curled his lips and said in a low voice, he also said that I have become brainless because of the experiment. Even if it is no use looking for an organization, it is not like a child who lost a fight and went home crying to an adult. No matter how strong the organization is, it is not the tale of the Silver Moon Knight. Otherwise Alan West could have chosen to give Sue Che and Tony Stark hallucinogens. He would have given them the poison long ago. TCH, let me just say, I didn't hurt my brain because of the experiment. Hey, I still want to learn manga. There is such a naive boss, come back to us. Inexplicably, the little brother who always likes to babble, always feels that his future is starting to look bleak. At the same time, inside the Avengers Alliance base. So, wait for the other party now. Steve went to Brooklyn to get surveillance. Only Tony and Sue Che were left sitting on chairs, chatting while basking in the sun. This matter does not need the help of other Avengers Alliance members. So Sue Che didn't call other members over. After all, everyone who makes money, takes vacations, teaches, and spends time with children. It's all very busy. Yeah, we have seized the opportunity first. As for what will happen next, just wait. Saying that, Sue Che picked up a glass of soda and looked at Tony. But having said that, Tony, your dark circles are getting heavier and heavier. Didn't you have a good night's rest during this time? Roughly the same. Facing Sue Che's inquiry, Tony Stark didn't hide anything. He also picked up the soda water in front of him and took a sip. His expression became a little dignified. Do you still remember my peers in the multi-universe? Damn it. We have no way to open the parallel universe channel, but it doesn't mean that in other parallel universes, my peers don't have that wall-breaking device. At least, what I saw recently after taking hallucinogens, the me in the zombie universe, has almost found a way to destroy the universe. Speaking of this, Tanya Stark took a deep breath, and then raised his hand mockingly from. It can't be stopped. The universe is on the verge of destruction. According to the Gem of Wisdom Anthony, in just half a month, more than 900 of the tens of thousands of survivors, there are only less than a few 100,000 left. Whether it's the zombie universe opening that channel or delaying it for a while, everyone will starve to death. It's not a good result anyway. After finishing speaking, Tony's expression gradually became a little more serious. Dude, the me who owns the Gem of Wisdom Anthony, his world has no food, no clean water, and everything is destroyed. At this moment, there are still hundreds of thousands of people left. People. You said, what did they eat to survive? I don't need to say it, you should be able to think it through. Hey, anyway, the me of the same body is already starving to death. He shook his head with a flat expression, but his tone was slightly dignified. I don't know if it's for myself who is about to starve to death. Or to survive, the hundreds of thousands of people who ate, what? Is that why you can't sleep? Listening to Tony's words, Sue Che leaned back on the chair. Whenever the end of the world comes, in order to survive, there will always be people who continue to break through the bottom line. It's a survival instinct, heinous as it is, but it's. In the middle of speaking, Sue Che waved his hand and did not continue speaking. Instead, he looked at Tony and said seriously, Tony, I think what you need now is to rest instead of thinking too much. From now on, I think you should stop taking hallucinogens. Facing Sue Che's very serious admonition, Tony Stark was silent for a moment. Then nodded. I know I can't go on like this. So since yesterday, I've been off hallucinogens. But seriously, buddy, I always feel that if those zombie universes can find a device to open other parallel universes, then 10 days in the consciousness will come to our universe. That's where I really feel the stress, the anxiety. You know, if the things I'm worried about actually happen, then I'm afraid our world. Spreading his hands Tony leaned back on the chair, feeling a little tired and said, I haven't really had a good rest for a long time. When I fall asleep every night, I will almost be awakened by nightmares. Because of this, Dr. Banner and I restarted the research on the psychic scepter, and wanted to install a layer of armor on this world. Dude, don't stop me, I really want to have an anxiety attack. If I don't finish this job, I'm afraid I won't get a good night's sleep for the rest of my life. Looking at Tony's serious expression, there was a hint of pleading. It seemed that he was worried that he, like Peepo, would forcibly stop his and Dr. Banner's research. All right. Although he knew what was going to happen, he looked at Tony with a haggard look at the moment. Sue Che still nodded. And the reason why Ultron was born, the bigger reason is which line of code. It was Tony who intercepted a relatively mature code from Hydra, the foundation of Sokovia. That's how Ultron was born. But since he came to this world, the Hydra environment of Sokovia has already been destroyed by his own people. Hydra in S.H.I.E.L.D. was also cleared prematurely. So Tony probably doesn't have Hydra's running code. Then Ultron might not have been born. Maybe, Tony will really put a layer of armor on the Earth? Seeing that Su-Che didn't stop himself, Tony Stark breathed a sigh of relief. Even the tone of voice is much lighter. Whoa, but seriously, man, anxiety attacks can be pretty exhausting. I'm very energetic right now. Use your mind magic to give it to me. Looking at Tony's expression of hurry up and let me wake up. Su-Che spread his hands dumbfoundingly and said, dude, I can indeed wake you up, but the best way is for you to have a good sleep. Believe me, although spiritual magic can restore your spirit, long-term lack of sleep will make your mental state even more tense. If things go on like this, maybe you don't worry about it too much. Before Su-Che could finish speaking, Tony Stark moved the stool forward and leaned forward. Quick, buddy, give it to me. I'm so dizzy and uncomfortable all day now. I promise, after you finish taking care of these damned bombers, I will definitely sleep on them for 3 to 5 days. Facing Tony's strong demands, Su-Che thought for a while, then stretched out his hand, and the orange-yellow mind magic floated into Tony Stark's mind. Tony Stark, who was originally a little sluggish, has obviously improved a lot. After moving his neck and making a rattling sound, Tony Stark stretched his waist and said, I have to say, you are a humanoid gas station, but maybe you can use this to start a company. Oh, don't be ridiculous. Looking at Tony, who raised his eyebrows and looked cheap, Su-Che picked up the soda and said, using this ability to start a company. What are you selling? Selling spiritual power. Give it to people who stay up late and work overtime every day. It's not impossible. And you are so handsome, and you have so many admirers, maybe you can sell it. Get out. Pointing a middle finger at Tony, Su-Che was about to curse, when the phone rang suddenly. He took out his mobile phone and took a look, and found that it was Steve's call, so he picked up the phone directly. Sue, I investigated the monitoring in Brooklyn, but unfortunately, I didn't find any effective information. S.H.I.E.L.D. also conducted a surveillance investigation on the places where the makers of the 23 bombings were controlled and were taken into vans. Obviously, those guys should have interfered with the surveillance video. Listening to Steve's words, Su-Che raised his eyebrows and said, that is to say, the surveillance side can't find any useful clues, right? Roughly the same. Inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Facing Su-Che's inquiry, Steve sighed insignificantly. At least for now, we can't trace any useful clues. Although we know the information inside the car through drawing, we can infer the model of the car, but the color, license plate and so on cannot be determined. Just as he was talking, an agent hurried over, picked up a tablet and handed it to Steve. Take the tablet from Agent S.H.I.E.L.D. Steve glanced at. Immediately, he said to Su-Che, dude, do you have a computer or something that can access the internet? There are videos of those two behind-the-scenes instigators on the internet. Definitely, and now mobile phones can also access the internet. Let me take a look first. Hang up on Steve. Su-Che called up the page of the network. Soon, the video of the mastermind behind the 23 explosions appeared on the phone. This is a short video of just under 2 minutes. On the cover of the video, there are 2 masked guys, one tall and one short. Putting the phone on the table, Su-Che turned on the video and watched it with Tony. In the video, I saw the tall boss sitting on the sofa, and the short boy standing next to him. The background behind the 2 people is an extremely empty factory building. The video started to play, and soon, the boss sitting on the sofa began to speak with a classic voice changer. Unexpectedly, there were only 23 bombings, and the famous Avengers were alarmed. You guys are faster than I expected. I watched your interview video and I have to say, Silver Moon Knight, Iron Man, Captain Magnesium. You guys are amazing in front of the camera. But, I just don't know if you can bear the price. In the video, the boss was sitting on the sofa, playing with the remote control of the bomb in his hand. I admit, it's like the Silver Moon Knight you said on TV. We are cowards. Even if you open the door, even if you evacuate all the Avengers, we still dare not go to the door to visit. But it doesn't matter, although we are not your opponents, ordinary people in New York City are very good playmates. Now, I have planted more than 30 bombs in New York City. As long as I press the switch on the remote control, 30 buildings will be reduced to ashes with a bang. Speaking of this, the boss opened his hands and gestured for a firework shape. These 30 bombs are my gift to all the citizens of New York. As he said that, the boss leaned forward and looked directly at the camera in front of him. Listen, if you don't want to see these 30 bombs turn into fireworks, Then promise me 2 requests. First, release Alan West, who was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. Second, I need blood samples from Silver Moon Knight Suche and Steve Rogers. Withdraw his body, even if the boss is wearing a mask. But the playful look in the eyes still couldn't stop. Next, the game begins. I really want to know, as the most powerful superhero team on Earth, whether you will compromise. Let the citizens of New York see that the safety of innocent people like them is the most important thing. The dignity of you Avengers is more important. The Avengers Alliance gave me 3 days, and likewise, I will give you 3 days. In 3 days, if I don't get what I want, well, I'm inviting all New Yorkers to a free fireworks show. Boom. Haha. With the guy's wild laughter, the video clip stopped abruptly. After the video finished playing, both Suche and Tony Stark had serious expressions on their faces. 30 bombsha euro fa euro f. Looking up at Suche, Tony Stark said seriously, if what this idiot said is true, then once these 30 bombs explode, the casualties caused. Bark. With that said, Tony Stark stood up and said, I'll search for the source of the video and see if I can find the IP release address. As long as it is a video posted on the internet, Jarvis can track the specific source even after layers of transformation. Good. Watching Tony stand up, Suche nodded and said, I'll let S.H.I.E.L.D. check to see if I can find traces of the 30 bombs that were planted. No matter what this guy is telling the truth or lies, at least for the time being, we must take it seriously. No problem. Nodding his head, Tony stood up and took a few steps, when he suddenly turned to Suche and said, Dude, if things go in the worst possible way, what do you think they'll do with your blood? I don't know, but they can't get my blood sample. Looking at Tony, Suche replied with a pun. On the one hand, this sentence is expressing that the Avengers never have the spirit of compromise like any enemy. On the other hand, it was Su Wei who was talking about the committee. The so-called fact is that there is a perfect defensive version of Superman's body. Even if they use the most advanced technology on the Earth, they don't want to let themselves shed a drop of blood. Seeing Suche's confident look, Tony Stark nodded, then turned and left. Tony knew that Suche's physical fitness was so strong that it was comparable to Superman. Whether it was bullets, missiles, they couldn't cause any defense-breaking damage to Suche. However, Tony obviously still has a trace of worry. After all, even in the comics, the Superman is so powerful that he can't match it except kryptonite. In Batman's Batcave, there is also a sample of his blood. With Tony Stark gone, get ready for Jarvis to start tracking. Suche continued to sit on the deck chair, basking in the sun on the lawn. As long as there is sun in your own heat vision ability, its power will increase constantly. Perhaps it won't be long before my own heat vision can easily destroy a fixed star. Online. As the video leaked, it became clear that there was more panic online. If Suche, Tony and Steve appeared in the parade, they would swear in front of everyone that they would be found. And also taunted them, so that their target was shifted from ordinary people to the Avengers Alliance. This greatly reduced the panic among the citizens of New York who had just experienced 23 bombings. So now, with the video streaming out online and starting to ferment, the citizens who had settled down in their hearts became flustered again. My God, 30 bombs, that's just horrible. Now I'm hiding at home and I don't dare to go to work anymore. What I'm most worried about is that our company has also been planted with a time bomb. Fact. Our house is opposite one of the 23 bombing sites, and I haven't recovered from my fear yet. I don't even dare to go out now. I just received a call from the company, saying that the company is going to have a 3-day holiday, and the boss has already booked the fastest flight to escape from New York. No one knows where those crazy guys planted the bomb. God, please bless us. Avengers will find them. God bless these superheroes and catch those damned guys as soon as possible. In fact, once panic begins to spread, people's reason will be constantly lost. Especially after the bombing just now, I heard that more than 30 bombs will be detonated at any time. These citizens of New York couldn't calm down at all. The above remarks are quite reasonable. Some people who were unable to suppress their rationality due to panic began to vent their anger on the internet. Whether it's the state police or the county police, or the FBI and S.H.I.E.L.D., even the Avengers are not spared. It seems that all these disasters are caused by them. In their eyes, without the state police, FBI, S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avengers, then naturally these things would not have happened. So this group of people keeps asking them to take responsibility for these things. Definitely, Suche didn't continue to read these remarks on the internet. Because, time has already driven the car back. This morning, Wanda drove to visit Pietro, who was doing an internship with Matthew. After all, as an elder sister, I went on vacation for a month and a half, and I can't even come back without seeing my younger brother. Lying on the bed, he patted Wanda's head lightly, signaling her not to make trouble. Holding the phone, Su-Che continued. No need, nah, you'd better go on vacation with peace of mind. Don't worry, you won't need to come back for this matter. You sure? On the other end of the phone, listening to Su-Che saying that she is not available for the time being, Natasha Romanoff sat on the beach chair and drank coconut milk while saying, if this matter is not handled properly, I am afraid the performance will be very bad. Right now the whole of New York is in a state of panic. If this matter cannot be resolved as soon as possible, if there is another explosion, I am worried that it will affect your reputation. Listen to the seriousness in Natasha Romanoff's tone. Su-Che took a look at Wanda, who was lying on the ground eating something, and raised her head from time to time to look at Wanda with charming eyes. Then he smiled and said, I know, but don't worry, nah, I have a way to solve this matter. Okay, since you have a solution, then I won't go back. I finally gave myself a vacation. I really enjoyed this vacation. After all, I'm the only one on this island. I can wear a bikini as much as I want without worrying about the scars left by the Winter Soldier on my stomach being seen. Well, happy holidays. Smiled and said something to Natasha Romanoff, then hung up the phone, patted Wanda on the head lightly, smiled in a doting tone. You. Hey, help me release the pressure. Turning over and turning into a knight, I feel as happy as jumping in the prairie. After Wanda let out a soft cry, she raised her hand and gently pinched her boyfriend's cheek. It was hard to go on vacation for more than a month, but I was called back and threatened. Hiss. Oh my god, those guys still want your blood samples for research? You said. What did they think? Looking at Wanda, who transformed into a heroic knight and fought with his own spear, and couldn't even speak very smartly. Su-Che raised his arm and pillowed it under his head, then smiled and said, it is estimated that the organization behind him wanted my blood sample. In the Avengers Alliance, Steve and I are not ordinary people. If they can get blood samples from me and Steve, then maybe some super ability users will be copied. While speaking, Su-Che straightened up on purpose. Ah! Exclaimed, then patted Su-Che on the shoulder coquettishly and gradually got down on the ground and said, you're going to be bad. It's you who eat the essence of it yourself, and you even pretend to help me release the pressure. Gently stroking Wanda's hair, Su-Che continued, however, I guess the main purpose of the organization behind that guy is to get my blood sample. As for adding Steve, it is probably to confuse the public, or to see if there are any new discoveries. Why? Eyes like Wong Quan, Wanda tried her best to control her trembling voice. Could it be that Steve's blood sample has no research value? It's not impossible, but as far as I know, Steve is not the only person who has been injected with Super Soldier Serum. Has anyone else used the Super Soldier Serum? This time, Wanda was really surprised. After all, it was never said that anyone else used the same Superfield Serum as Captain America. Indeed, ever since Steve was frozen, that group. Anyway, that black super soldier is pretty miserable. With that said, Su-Che got up and pressed it while Wanda exclaimed, I think maybe I should exercise a bit. I still prefer running. What do you think? Cut. She glanced at her boyfriend lightly, then Wanda arched her body and put her chin on the pillow. I also like running. People, you have to exercise your body. Sitting or staying for a long time, the body will lose money sooner or later. Just like now, Loki feels that Tony Stark's body is about to die in front of him. Actually, you can eat slowly, after all, there is plenty of food here. Looking at Tony Stark, who was sitting on the table in front of him, devouring it, it seemed that he hadn't eaten serious food for a long time. Loki raised his eyebrows, then turned his head to look at Mobius and said, Are you sure this is a time management offender? His world is already on the verge of destruction, according to the results of my investigation. The you and I in the parallel world you mentioned often appear at the time points of the world that is about to suffer annihilation. However, his world is about to be destroyed, and there are no living people left. He is the only one left in New York. Are you sure he is a time criminal? Pointing at Tony Stark, who was eating food in front of him, his whole body was skinny, and it seemed that he was about to lose his appearance. Loki couldn't imagine what happened in this cold world. You must know that when he was captured, the walls of Tony Stark's industrial building were filled with superhero items that he had seen and hadn't seen before. Even his own brother Thor's hammer. If it wasn't for being unable to pick it up, Lu Ji wanted to give that hammer away. He is indeed a time offender. Listening to Loki's inquiry, Mobius spread his hands. Originally, after the world he lived in experienced a great war, all superheroes died, and the Earth's population of more than 7 billion. There are only more than 9 million left. According to the normal timeline, he should die soon, and the only 9 million survivors on the Earth will also die one after another within the next half a year. At that time, the Earth will also re-enter the Ice Age. But I don't know what method he used, and he actually connected to the peers of other parallel universes. Having said that, Mobius looked at Loki. Originally, this matter should not be handled by us. Most of the worlds should have the existence of a time management bureau. But unfortunately, after we tracked another Mobius and Loki to this parallel universe, we found that this world does not have a time administration. I don't know, is it the worst outcome in my heart? You mean, this Tony Stark's time bureau was destroyed? Looking at Mobius, Loki took a step back with folded arms. Hey man, ever since you brought me to the time administration, and I was talking about finding another you and me. But you didn't say that this time the mission is life-threatening. Hell, the existence of the entire time administration can be wiped out, just by you and me? Maybe I should think about your request carefully. Maybe according to the original timeline, it would be a good thing for me to be imprisoned in the dungeon of Asgard. Call. A euro, wiping his mouth with a napkin, Tony Stark sat on the chair with a satisfied face. It can be seen that the Tony Stark in front of him seems to have not eaten decent food for a long time. I am full. He looked at Tony, who was slumped on a chair in front of him, with a satisfied expression on his face. Loki crossed his arms and asked, "Aren't you worried about your situation at all? Know that as a prisoner of the time administration, you are likely to be judged. And I feel that you should not escape the fate of being judged." For some reason, he looked at Tony Stark in front of him. Loki just wanted to scare him. It could be mischievous heart, or it could be Tony Stark's guy from his own universe. Facing Loki's intimidation, the Tony Stark in front of him spread his hands indifferently. What is there to worry about? What can be better than participating in a level universe-destroying war in person? Obviously we have won, but the price can only be that waiting to die is even more terrifying. Loki, believe me, it might be a pleasure for me if my life is judged simply and neatly. You know me. Well, as soon as this sentence came out, Loki realized that it was an obvious nonsense. Definitely, the famous evil god Loki, the younger brother of Thor's little handsome guy, was thrown by Hulk, stabbed by Logan, and controlled by Professor X in the Battle of New York. If Thor hadn't interceded, I'm afraid you would have lost your life on Earth long ago. Speaking of this, Tony Stark stood up and looked at Loki. However, you should not be the Loki of our universe. After all, the Loki of our universe has long since died. All dead. All dead. After speaking, Tony's expression was a little gloomy, but soon he cheered up again. Perhaps, it should be said that after losing everything again, it has long since become indifferent. Listening to Tony Stark's answer, Loki turned his head to look at Mobius and said, "Logan, who is Professor O? I always feel that Loki in this universe is much worse than me. There are worse things you haven't seen yet." Hearing Loki's words, Mobius spread his hands. "At least you didn't turn into a woman, and you didn't turn into a crocodile either." Walter. Female Loki and crocodile. What are you talking about? Loki subconsciously frowned when he heard Mobius say that there are female versions of himself and crocodile versions of himself. Tony Stark, who was sitting on a chair beside him, suddenly said, "Wait, you just said that you don't know about Mutant, Logan and Professor X? Is there a guy named Silver Moon Knight Suche in your world?" Looking at Loki with a hint of curiosity, Tony Stark, whose world has been destroyed, asked curiously. "Definitely, if it wasn't for him, maybe I would have won the New York game with Chitauri." Facing Tony Stark's question, Loki replied with a sneer. "Then I almost know that you belong to that universe." Tony Stark, who received the reply, nodded. "Wait, you mean, other universes don't have Suche?" Looking at Tony Stark's appearance that I already understood, Loki's curiosity was aroused. "Is there anything strange about that?" Answering Loki, he looked at half of the food on the table. Tony Stark seemed to keep eating. But Anthony in his mind told himself that it was for his own health. It's best not to overeat. In fact, according to my knowledge, the so-called Silver Moon Knight Suche hardly ever appeared in other universes, let alone this superhero. Not in my world, not in the world of the zombie universe, not in the world of Bagwin. Neither is the world of Iron Man that Bagwin is connected to. Actually, there's nothing strange about this. It's like the Tony Stark of your world that I can't get in touch with recently." Putting the napkin on the table, Tony Stark said with a smile, "There is no mutant in your world, and there is no Silver Moon Knight Suche in our world, that's fair. And according to Doctor Strange, the parallel universe of Duja, who is the juggler, he said that there will always be several unique existences born in the multi-universe. Well, just like America Chavez, she is the only one in all the multi-universes, and ability actually travels through the multi-universe. Although, she is still a child now, and she still has no way to fully control the ability to travel through the multi-universe." Listening to Tony Stark's words, Loki and Mobiusu looked at each other. Then he walked aside and muttered softly. Do you think his mental state can really help us? Do we have any other options? Loki, you don't want to stay in the time administration all the time either. I don't like the way you speak. Sorry, but I think he should be our helper. After all, you recommend Silver Moon Knight Suche as a joke. Our time management bureau dare not arrest him, let alone ask him to help. Okay, that's it for him. I hope this damn incident can end soon. I have to go back to Asgard to deal with those damn dark elves. This time I won't let them hurt my mother. No problem, but this happened a year later, so we still have a lot of time. After whispering a few words, Loki and Mobius walked over again. Tony Stark, there are currently two choices before you. Looking at Tony, Loki said. The first one is to be sent to the interrogation court of the time administration, and it is estimated that there is a high chance of being judged. The second option is to join us and become the third member of Mobius' team and me. As long as you complete the task, then I think we will definitely arrange a good ending for you, at least allowing you to spend the rest of your life in peace. Speaking of this, Loki shrugged his shoulders. Actually, I kind of hope that you choose the first one and be judged. After all, the Tony Stark in my world didn't leave a good impression on me. The choice now rests with Tony Stark. How to choose is up to him. At the same time, inside the shield of the main universe. It's not a forced thing. Looking at Alan West in front of him, the guy who gave himself and Tony the hallucinogens. Suche sat opposite him and said, to be honest, I am willing to believe you. After all, you would rather betray the organization than give Tony and me hallucinogens as a reminder. At least now, I have no reason to doubt you, fan. To be honest, as a villain, it is really a wonderful feeling to be trusted by a superhero who symbolizes justice. Sitting opposite Suche, Alan West laughed self-deprecatingly. I never even thought that one day I would become a superhero's helper. Especially, this superhero is still the soul of Avengers. If my daughter knows, then I think she will jump for joy. Listening to Alan West's words, Suche laughed and said, so, you agreed? Definitely. Do I have a reason to say no? Spreading his hands, Alan West leaned back on the chair. Since I chose to inject hallucinogens into the food of you and Mr. Tony Stark, I was doomed to betray the organization behind me. Although if the April 23rd incident was known to the people in the organization, I might die without a burial place. But I still have no way to kill the person who saved my daughter. Actually, this choice is not difficult. After all, no matter how important the organization is, in my heart, they can't even compare to my daughter's hair. So. The concluding remarks were not finished. Alan West put his hands on the table and said seriously. I watched what happened in the recent period, especially the video on the internet. The guy with the bomb remote is called Mark Daniel, and the short guy is his little brother. Originally, the organization chose Mark Daniel as the subject of the experiment. After all, if he made a mistake, he would be punished. However, because the technology is not yet fully mature, his little brother was worried that the old Mark would die on the operating table. So I chose to complete this experiment for him. The end result was that Mark Daniel was let go by the organization. After all, he still used it. But the younger brother, who was originally close to 1.9 meters, has also become less than 1.6 meters tall. As for ability, that little brother's ability should be able to control people's spirit, and then bury a command in people's mind. Similar to Hypnotic Ability's ability. Once this command is triggered, just like the 7 unlucky ones caught by S.H.I.E.L.D., they will immediately lose consciousness and complete the task according to the command. Afterwards, they don't even know what they did. As he said that, Alan West looked at Suche. I can help you find them, as a reward for the Avengers who saved my daughter's living area from the hands of aliens in New York. But I have a request. You say. Faced with Alan West's request, Suche did not refuse. It is very fair for others to help and then ask. She's not that old woman from DC Suicide Squad, definitely not threatening with a bomb in her neck. After I help you find Mark Daniel and his little brother, I want S.H.I.E.L.D. to come forward and help me and my wife and daughter fake death. Then arranged for me and my family to leave here. Although I don't know what the organization behind me is doing, they are very powerful. If I can't have the guarantee of safety, then I absolutely can't risk the safety of my wife and daughter. As soon as Alan West's voice fell, a broadcast suddenly came from the interrogation room. Well, it's Nick Fury's voice. I say yes. After you help Sue find that idiot named Mark Daniel, I will ask the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. to help you find a place suitable for the whole family to live in seclusion. On the basis of ensuring your normal life and your daughter's studies, no one will disturb you. Listening to Nick Fury on the radio, Suche pointed to the radio and said, Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., although this guy is very arrogant, and even likes to do whatever it takes for the mission. And he hardly trusts anyone, and it's hard for people to believe his character, but I think he promised this in the name of S.H.I.E.L.D., so he should be trustworthy. Inside Nick Fury's office. Listening to Suche's evaluation of himself, Nick Fury was a little speechless. From Suche's evaluation of himself just now, it is not difficult to find that because he is full of resentment towards himself. It seems that I didn't provoke him, and no matter what I did, I was doing my best to help him. So, where did this resentment come from? Don't ask. The question is to be the first batch of holders of the Black Gold Diary, but to have that damned, motionless 73% trust value. I'm okay. Interrogation room. Listening to Suche's evaluation, Alan West nodded. I believe he should not deceive such a small person as me. Then, happy cooperation. After shaking hands with Alan West, Suche got up and prepared to leave. Is that why you trust me? Seeing Suche walk to the door, Alan West suddenly asked. Aren't you worried that I will deliberately deceive you? Listening behind him, Alan West asked. Suche turned to look at him. I don't know if I should trust you, but I will always believe in a father's love for his daughter. After speaking, Suche nodded to him, then opened the door and turned to leave. Well, there is one thing that Suche didn't say. During the period when I just talked with him again, I used the spiritual magic quietly again. Although I still tend to trust him subjectively. However, everything needs to be prepared. Ah, damn it. My current style of acting is more and more like Batman Bruce Wayne. Unfortunately, I am not as rich as him. In the hallway. Here's a list of the big bomb disposal experts Nick found at S.H.I.E.L.D. Pass the information on the information list to Suche. Maria Hill walked towards the elevator door with Suche, and asked. With the scanning of Tony Stark's armor, plus these professional bomb disposal experts, a bomb from Sanchi factory can be destroyed within 10 minutes at most. Done. However, are you sure you have a way to get all the bombs together in 2 minutes? Not to mention where these bombs were placed, we don't know. Even if you know, there is no way to send the bombs to S.H.I.E.L.D. At the door of the elevator, while waiting for the elevator to come up, Suche said, Who said I'm going to send the bomb to S.H.I.E.L.D.? Turning to look at Maria Hill. As for these bomb disposal experts, they don't really need it. If there are too many people, sometimes it will be chaotic. Then what are you going to do about it? As the elevator had arrived, Suche stepped onto the elevator directly. Of course I have my own way. Queens, on a certain street. Peter Parker, who just came down from upstairs, saw a middle-aged man leaning against the wall. A trace of vigilance could not help but rise in my heart. Recently, New York has been full of disasters. Aunt May said that she should be careful when going to and from school every day. If it weren't for Aunt May still having a job, she might never leave her side all the time. But for the reported bomber, Peter Parker felt that he was not afraid of him. With superheroes like the powerful Avengers, Peter Parker felt that the bomber would be caught by the Avengers Alliance sooner or later. Not to mention, that stupid bomber even dared to post a video online to threaten Silver Moon Knight. You must know that Aunt May said that the Silver Moon Knight is the most powerful superhero on Earth. Looking carefully at the uncle leaning against the wall, Peter Parker saw that he had nothing in his hand except the phone. Only then did I feel a little relieved. Since he wasn't carrying a backpack with a bomb, he was still leaning against 11 and smoking a cigarette leisurely. Probably not with that bomber. Forget it, go buy eggs for Aunt May. Tonight, Aunt May said that she would use eggs to make delicious food. Aunt May's culinary skills seem to be unable to cook any delicious food. Shush. Don't let others know what's on your mind. Alan West, who was leaning against the wall, looked at the teenager in front of him and looked at him vigilantly, before turning around and running to the store. He couldn't help but smiled and took a deep breath of the cigarette, then slowly exhaled light blue smoke. Mark, this guy is really sinful. Even children in their teens panic like this. People from S.H.I.E.L.D. said that in the last 23 bombings, at least 30 children were killed. Damn it, Mark is getting more and more bottomless. Even if you are a villain, you can't hurt those innocent and lively children. He took a sharp puff of the cigarette, then threw the cigarette butt on the ground, and did not forget to crush it with his foot. After exhaling the smoke, he took out his phone and dialed. When the phone was connected, Alan West said directly, Mark, I'm here. On the other end of the phone, I heard Alan West's voice on the phone. Mark the bomber frowned and said, 7 years ago, on the streets of Manhattan. You drank too much at night, and then fell into the lake or I fished you out. After you caught it, you insisted on reuniting with the woman who abandoned you, and in the end you cried until you peed your pants. In the end, I had no choice. I ran to the store to buy adult diapers for you. Listening to Alan West on the other end of the phone directly telling the embarrassing incident 7 years ago, Mark finally believed that it was not someone pretending to be him. Damn it, stop talking, I know it's you. He glanced at the younger brother who was reading the Batman comic book next to him. After making sure that he didn't hear what was on the phone, Mark was relieved. After all, my little brother has a big mouth. If he hears it, he probably can't help but spread it everywhere. It seems that S.H.I.E.L.D. has compromised and let you out. But Alan, you should not betray me. Betrayal prevents you from choosing to cooperate with S.H.I.E.L.D., and then deliberately set the trap. Still feeling a little uneasy, Mark asked intentionally. Fart. Leaning against the building, Alan West took out another cigarette and lit it. What do I gain from lighting you? Don't forget that my wife and daughter are still in New York. You know the means of organization. I don't want to see my wife being sold and my daughter lying on the test bench. As he said that, Alan West exhaled a puff of smoke ring, and then continued, I just came out to talk to you. Hang up. I have to go see my wife and daughter. Being captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. and haven't seen them for more than 5 months. Wait. Don't hang up. Don't hang up. Hearing that Alan West was about to hang up the phone, Mark on the other end of the phone said quickly, you can watch your wife and daughter at any time, and now our task is even more important. Dude, you don't know, in order to save you, I did the bomb thing without telling the organization. I only told the organization after the incident got serious. This time, if I can't get the blood sample of the Silver Moon Knight, the organization will probably send me to the laboratory bench. So Alan, it's best for us to meet now. Your brain is better than mine. Let's make a good plan and get the blood sample of the Silver Moon Knight. Speaking of this, Mark the Bomber glanced at the younger brother who was holding the comic book next to him, and then said, Dude, you can't let me discuss it with my younger brother, you know, he's not good at thinking. Hearing the boss mention himself, the younger brother who was holding Batman vs. Joker raised his head subconsciously. Just when he was about to open his mouth to say something, he saw the horrifying eyes from the sky. She shrank her neck a little guilty, then lowered her head and continued to read the comic book. Etc. I didn't do anything wrong. Tien is afraid of the boss. Thinking of this, the little brother straightened his back again. Hey, aren't you afraid that the Silver Moon Knight and the Avengers are following me? Listening to Mark's invitation, Alan West laughed. Come on buddy, you are a professional in tracking and anti-tracking and planning. And even if they come, I'm not afraid. After all, only I know where the 30 bombs are buried, and I specially invited some helpers from the organization. If the Avengers or S.H.I.E.L.D. people dare to come, then I will directly detonate the bomb. Tisk. Unless they are crazy, they will play games with the lives of these citizens in New York. Listening to Mark's swearing words, Alan West shrugged his shoulders. Okay, according to the rules, you can send a car to pick me up. I'm at XX in Queens. In addition, the Silver Moon Knight's phone shield told me gone. Obviously, for the sake of the 30 bombs you have hidden, they probably have a compromise idea. Got it. Watchdog. After hanging up the phone, Mark sent the address directly to Alan West. After throwing the cigarette butt on the ground and crushing it, Alan West waited. After hanging up the phone, Mark looked directly at the guy holding the computer next to him. The call just now lasted 3 minutes and 58 seconds, enough for you to track it down. How about it? Is there anyone tracking Alan's phone? No one has tracked Mark's cell phone signal. It seems that this time S.H.I.E.L.D. really has some scruples about the bomb you installed. In the face of Mark's inquiry, the technical experts directly gave a conclusion. Inside Tony Stark's lab, freeing Alan West is just the first step. On the other end of the video, the masked bomber looked at Su-Che, Tony Stark and Steve. The tone is very proud. It seems that it is a very great feat to be able to compromise the members of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avengers. 2 hours, you only have 2 hours to deliver to the designated place. If I don't get your blood sample after 2 hours, then I will detonate those 30 bombs in New York. At that time, everyone killed in the explosion will die because of you. Looking at the bomber who was full of threats in his words, Su-Che said directly, how can you be sure that the blood sample I gave you is from me or someone else? Even if it's a test, I'm afraid you can't find a comparison sample. How about this? Tell me your address, and then I will go over in person and ask you to draw a blood sample. Do you think I'm stupid? Facing Su-Che's proposal, the bomber raised his eyebrows and sneered, let you come over so that we can be wiped out in one fell swoop? Su-Che, who doesn't know that you are the most powerful superhero on Earth? I'm not stupid enough to let you visit. As for the blood sample, I suggest you better not play tricks, or I will detonate the bomb immediately. After speaking, the bomber hung up the video directly. Found it. As soon as the video was hung up, Jarvis immediately said, Mr. Su, according to the name of the bomber provided by Alan West, and even though the online video was encrypted just now, I still found the current address of the bomber through the video signal connection. Listening to the words of Jarvis, Tony immediately came to the computer. Looking at the address in front of him, Tony Stark turned his head to Su-Che and said, who would have thought that the address where this guy is hiding is really. Damn, If I remember correctly, this address should be a large warehouse belonging to Stark Industries. It seems like ever since I shut down the Stark Industries arms manufacturing division, this warehouse has also closed. Facing Tony's words, Su-Che shrugged his shoulders to express his lack of understanding, but Jarvis said, "Sir, this warehouse in New York used to belong to Stark Industries. It was used to store weapons and facilitate transportation and sales. After you were kidnapped from the desert and came back, you announced the permanent closure of the weapons manufacturing department, which produced a series of effects. One of the impacts is that the original one or two belonging to the Stark industry has only retained 5 as new industrial storage. The rest of the docks, warehouses, etc. were auctioned off after the Stark Industries stock fell. According to the data, the information of the buyer who located the address of the warehouse, the information of the buyer who photographed the warehouse matches the name of the bomber provided by Alan West. So I have reason to believe that the bomber has actually been eyeing you and Mr. Su-Che for a long time. To be precise, you should be the first person to be eyeing." Listening to the analysis of Jarvis, Tony Stark spread his hands. "Dude, so it seems that I have implicated the two of you? Who cares who gets involved, since we already know the address, the next initiative is in our hands." Facing Tony's words, Steve said something, and then said to Su-Che, "Sue, let me take the people from the SHIELD operation team to catch them. I'm confident I'll catch them all before they detonate their bombs. I always feel that things are not that simple." Looking at Steve, who was always ready to act, he said to the two on the table, "Obviously, there should be an organization behind this bomber named Mark. And according to Alan West, this organization has been conducting experiments such as whether ordinary people can obtain super abilities. The people under control 2 days ago caused 23 bombings, which is the best proof. Don't you think this method is very familiar? Hydra." Listening to the potential meaning in Su-Che's words, Tony Stark was the first to react. "When the Sokovia Hydra base was destroyed, I retrieved the research logs and some data of those guys. According to the information and logs I got, Sokovia Hydra is also researching experiments on whether ordinary people can obtain super abilities. And according to the information above, although most of the experiments have failed, it is not without success. However, it is a pity that those so-called successful experiments were eventually destroyed because they were out of control." Having said that, Tony Stark looked at Steve at the side. "What's the matter? This matter has something to do with me." Facing Tony's eyes, Steve frowned. "That is to say, in addition to the experiment of studying whether ordinary people can obtain supernatural abilities, Hydra also took into account the super soldier serum, right?" Although Tony Stark didn't say it clearly, Steve still understood it. "If it's related to me, then it must be a super soldier serum experiment." "That's right." Nodding, he wrapped up the dried blueberries and handed them to Sue and Steve. Watching the two grab a few dried blueberries and throw them into their mouths, Tony Stark put a dried blueberry into his mouth. While continuing, "So Sue was very familiar with this method just now, and I immediately thought of the Hydra base in Sokovia. The method of using experiments to create super ability fighters is very similar, and it is difficult to link the organization behind the bomber with Hydra. It's a pity, all the Hydra in SHIELD have been wiped out, otherwise we might be able to find the organization behind the bomber based on this clue." While Tony was talking, Su-Che's cell phone rang suddenly. Picked up the phone and took a look, and found that it was a text message with a code sent by Alan West. "Copy the code and send it to Tony," and Tony immediately let Jarvis decipher it. "This code should be the code to connect and control 30 bombs. As long as the source of the code can be analyzed, the 3,000 bombs hidden by the bomber can be located. Jarvis is one of the top artificial intelligences in the world today. So analyze and decipher a line of code, and then locate the specific location of the bombs that are controlled and connected." This is no difficulty for Jarvis. Soon, according to Jarvis deciphering, a New York floor plan appeared in front of the three people. According to the red dot shown on the floor plan, it is the position where the bomber placed the bomb. However, the next sentence of Jarvis directly made the originally excited Steve frown instantly. According to the serial numbers of the bombs, if any bomb is dismantled first, if all bombs cannot be dismantled at the same time within 1 minute, the remaining bombs will explode directly. In addition, each bomb has a different number and needs to be disassembled one by one in order. When the bomb is dismantled, the person holding the controller will find it immediately. The detonation method of the bomb is not timing, but remote detonation. So, before Jarvis finished speaking, Tony Stark answered directly. "So, even if the bomb is dismantled, once the person holding the remote control of the bomb presses the button, according to the signal fluctuation of the array, it will explode." Damn it. This is a technology unique to Stark Industries. Those guys have even learned this. What's the meaning? Listening to Tony's words, Steve frowned and said, could it be that after the bomb is found and dismantled at the same time, it will explode? That's right. Looking at Steve, Tony Stark shrugged his shoulders and said, in other words, you and everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. will defuse the bomb at the same time. Even if the fuse is cut, it doesn't matter. As long as the remote control is in my hand, I only need to press it lightly, and playing the will immediately trigger the explosion system. Even the moment you touch the bomb, I can receive the same frequency feedback signal, without waiting for you to walk out of the corridor. The whole building will be blown to ashes with a bang. But even so, after the bomber pressed the explosion button, I can only try my best to delay the time for 3 minutes. Listening to Tony's explanation, Steve Rogers frowned and looked at Suche. This is difficult, which means that even if we know the specific location of the bomb, it is useless. Unless we can put all the bombs away from the crowd in the first place. However, more than 30 bombs are scattered in various places in New York. If you want to do it, it is simply impossible. Who says it's impossible? Seeing Steve's serious expression, Suche laughed. 3 minutes. Enough. The reason why I asked Alan West to go back was to find out where the bomb was placed. As long as you have a position, even under harsh conditions, someone can easily do it. After the voice fell, Suche pressed the headset. Come in. Before Tony and Steve could react, support appeared directly in front of them in the next second. I'm special. Seeing Pietro suddenly appear, Tony was taken aback. He looked at Pietro in front of him, and then at the door that seemed to be opened in an instant. Even Tony's voice changed a bit. How did he get here? Teleportation? No, it's supersonic to be precise. Looking at the surprised Tony Stark in front of him, Pietro tidied his hair and said proudly, it's normal that you can't see clearly. After all, my speed has exceeded the speed of sound. Although it's not close to the speed of light, it's normal that you can't see clearly with the eyes of an old man like you. Listening to Pietro's complimentary words, Tony pursed his lips, and then said to Suche, your brother's tone of voice is really annoying. It's been several years, and the way this kid talks is still so stinky. It's about the same as you were before. Listening to Tony's complaints, Suche smiled, and then said to Tony, Tony, you teach Pietro how to pull out the fuse of the bomb, and then tell Quicksilver the specific location of the bomb. At that time, he will gather all the bombs together as quickly as possible, and then throw them into the sea. As for the rest, leave it to me. As he spoke, Suche's body gradually lifted from the ground. This is the first time someone has threatened me, so I'm going to see how capable they are. Watching Suche's body slowly fly up, Tony Stark directly asked Jarvis to open the ceiling, allowing Suche to fly out smoothly. After Suche left, Tony Stark looked at Pietro. No wonder Sue has always been confident about the threat of this bomber. It turns out that you are sus Holcard. I said why Sue rejected the bomb disposal expert offered by S.H.I.E.L.D. It turns out that he had already prepared for it. Well, but having said that, handsome boy, that strand of white hair on your forehead is quite individual. Come on. Let me teach you how to defuse the bomb in the simplest way. I think those people's expressions will be very exciting. Listening to Tony's words, Pietro blew on his white-dyed lock of hair. If it weren't for Wanda's disagreement, and Matthew's statement that real lawyers don't pursue individuality too much. Otherwise, I would have already dyed all my hair white. Originally belonging to Stark Industries, now in the warehouse occupied by the Bombermark and his gang. Boss, you all know that our location has already been exposed in the video just now. In this case, what are we waiting for? Run quickly. Seeing that the boss is full of confidence, he even has the heart to read the latest issue of Batman's comics. The chatty boy was so anxious that he even started to pace around. Boss, I guess it won't be long before that Silver Moon Knight will call. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity to escape, then it will be too late. I know boss, you are prepared. Even the dozen or so guys in our warehouse are all super ability users who came down from the experimental bench. But that's the Silver Moon Knight, the most powerful superhero on Earth. How can we be his opponents just because of us? Listening to the younger brother constantly dangling in front of him, he opened his mouth and kept nagging. Mark closed the manga impatiently, then frowned and said, what are you so afraid of? Can you not be afraid? That's the Knight of the Silver Moon, the bloodiest man on Earth that even aliens can't defeat. We just have a few small shrimps, it's not enough for someone to slap. Facing the boss's impatience, the younger brother bumped into the sky and said as usual. Even if he came, he wouldn't dare to do anything. Shaking the detonator, Mark said indifferently, as long as he dares to act rashly, thousands of people will die in New York at least. So, what bullshit is the most powerful superhero on Earth? Even if he came in person, he has to Before the words fell, the big iron door that was originally closed by several people in the warehouse was suddenly pierced by a terrifying hot line of sight. Even following the terrifying heat sight, 2 deep scratches were left on the ground of the warehouse. As 2 hot lines of sight penetrated the iron gate, only a bang was heard, and the iron gate collapsed instantly. Afterwards, Su-che, who was wearing the cloak of the Silver Moon Knight battlesuit and still had terrifying heat in his eyes, landed in front of them from the air. Even if I come in person, what should I do? Looking at Mark sitting on the sofa in front of him, and the guys in various appearances after a dozen experiments. There is a trace of coldness in Su-che's voice. Superman, Superman. He looked at Su-che, who was standing in the air with his eyes emitting heat. Mark's chattering younger brother immediately hugged his head and shouted. I knew it. I knew that Silver Moon Knight and Superman have the same attributes, and I said a long time ago that we don't have kryptonite, so we are no match for him at all. Boss, you still want to lure him over and prepare to ridicule him, isn't this a death sentence? While talking, this little brother lay on the ground with his head in his hands very conscientiously. It looks like I am not with them, Silver Moon Knight, if you hit them, don't implicate me. Seeing this little brother's movements, a strong man on the side sneered and said, Mark, you little brother did the operation on the laboratory table to destroy your brain? Shut up. Damn it, anyway, he got on the test bench for me. Even if it's a shame, he's still mine. Ah. Hearing Mark's words, the brawny man sneered, and then his whole body became as strong as steel. He grabbed a specially made iron ball weighing more than 100 caddies and smashed it viciously at Su-che. Facing a 100 iron ball hitting him, Su-di, who was standing in the air, didn't move. When psychokinesis broke out instantly, the iron ball that was originally sharp enough to cut through the wind and hit him was directly fixed in the midair. Seeing this scene, the dozen or so guys standing beside Mark took a step back subconsciously. For Su-che, who is known as the most powerful superhero on Earth, to be honest, they are still very passionate. Especially when seeing Su-che's Superman-like posture descending, if he didn't know that Mark had a detonator in his hand that allowed Su-che to cast a mouse-like weapon. It is estimated that these people have already run away. Only Steel, whose mind is also bad, will be the first to attack Su. But before everyone could react, the next second the iron ball that was originally aimed at Su-che was smashed towards Steel like a cannonball. Boom. The sound of violent collision between the steel echoed in the entire warehouse, and the Steel who was trying to catch the iron ball with both hands was directly thrown more than 10 meters away. Seeing Steel being thrown flying by the iron ball, another guy whose body could turn into rubber rushed towards Su-che in an instant. But before he rushed to Su-che's side, his arms were cut off by Su-che's hot sight. After a scream, the severed arms stretched out again, and even stretched more than 10 meters, and punched Su-che heavily. Grasping the rubber man's long arm with one hand, before Su-che could speak, he heard the rubber man laughing sullenly. Others are afraid of you, but I am not afraid of you. Even if you cut me into 100 pieces, I can grow back. Oh, is it so? Hearing the rubber man's triumphant words, Su-che sneered. With a light wave, the rubber man was lifted into the air by an invisible force. No matter how hard the rubber man struggles, he still cannot break free from this invisible net. Is it infinite growth? Even if you turn into rubber, you are still human. As soon as Su-che's voice fell, the next second the moisture in the rubber man's body began to seep from the skin. In an instant, the whole person began to shrivel and shapeshifting. Feeling the sudden change in his body, the rubber man who was originally complacent couldn't help looking at Su-che with horrified eyes and screamed, Damn it, what did you do to me? I know someone can resurrect infinitely, but I don't believe you can too. The cold voice reverberated in the entire warehouse, and it was not mixed with any emotion. Even the extremely indifferent voice made every super ability user who came down from the test bed present in the heart. Especially when I saw with my own eyes that usually cheap rubber man who always claimed he couldn't die. He actually lost his life in an instant, and was turned into a shriveled, inflexible mummy by Su-che. The fear from the heart began to magnify infinitely in an instant. Su-che also didn't give these people a chance to be afraid. The heat vision directly turned the rubber man in fear into powder, and then began to slaughter these super ability people, mercilessly. These superpowers who usually have a high status in the organization and claim to be able to govern a city. In front of Su-che, he didn't even have the slightest strength to parry. Listening to these super ability users who usually show off their might, but are wailing in fear at the moment. The little brother lying on the ground was shaking with his head in his arms. Especially seeing the rubber man being turned into powder, and the so-called invincible Steel being turned into a puddle of molten iron by Su-che's heat vision. The head of the guy who could send out sound wave attacks was blown into watermelon juice, and the upper body of the guy who could fly flew, but the lower body disappeared. Seeing this tragic scene, the little brother lying on the ground trembled all over his body. I just said it, I just said it, you guys are definitely not the opponents of the Silver Moon Knight. And clamored to send the Silver Moon Knight to hell. It's okay now, it's okay now, all the guys who rely on their abilities to force themselves to show off their power, all go to hell now. There are so many people who can't stop him from making a move. Do you really think he is the most powerful superhero on Earth? You should have listened to me at the beginning, and after you rescued Alan West, you should just let it go. Damn it. I almost peed my pants because of the scare, it's all caused by you arrogant bastards. On the side, Mark, who was also frightened and dumbfounded, also reacted to the screams of horrified coming from his ears. In an instant, he stood up and yelled at Suche. Enough, damn it, stop quickly, or I will blow up all the citizens of New York. While speaking, he put his hand on the remote control that detonated the bomb. It's over, this time it's completely over. Mark knew that this time he was completely useless. You must know that even if experiments with super ability users are constantly carried out in the organization, there are less than 30 successful super ability users in the entire organization. Now, more than half of it was lost at once, and those who lost were all the so-called most powerful super ability users. With such a big loss, the organization will never let itself go. Thinking of this, Mark felt his head spin a little bit. Damn, don't these guys claim to be strong against Avengers? Don't these guys claim to be able to easily destroy a city? Why is it that in front of the Silver Moon Knight alone, he doesn't even have the slightest strength to resist, and can only turn into a lamb and let him be slaughtered? Waste. This is a bunch of waste who only know how to brag. No, I can't sit still like this, otherwise the organization will not let me go. By the way, as long as the blood sample of the Silver Moon Knight is obtained, maybe the organization will let him go, and even improve his status. It's like grabbing the last straw. Mark looked at Suche with red eyes and shouted hoarsely. Stop it, or I will detonate the bomb immediately and let the whole New York be buried with them. It's over. Hearing the crazy roar of the boss, the younger brother lying on the ground subconsciously moved to the side. Although I don't know the characters of these superheroes. But how could a truly strong person accept threats from others? As I said a long time ago, this is not going to work. But if the boss doesn't listen to his own words, what can he do? Let's lean back to the side, so as not to be splashed with blood. Damn it. Give me your blood sample, immediately. As if putting all his eggs in one basket, the bomber yelled at Suche frantically. Don't even try to kill me and get the detonator. Damn it. I know you have all kinds of powerful abilities, but the detonator of this bomb is connected to my heartbeat. Once my heart stopped, the detonator went off instantly. Don't even think about trapping me, there is cyanide in my teeth as long as you dare to make the slightest move, then I will immediately take the cyanide and let the people of New York bury me with me. Facing the red-eyed, desperate bomber like a mad dog at the moment, Suche slowly fell from the sky. Looking at the bomber in front of him, he took several steps back in fright because of his actions. Suche said indifferently, "Do you want innocent people to be buried with you? Okay, then press the button to detonate." What? What? Seeing Suche's indifferent expression, the bomber was stunned for a moment. After recovering from his senses, Yin Shin unexpectedly felt an indescribable anger. Damn it. How can you do this? You are a superhero. How can you not care about the lives of those innocent people? You know, those people are your crazy admirers. How can you do this? You are committing a crime, and you will be cast aside by countless people. Listening to the crazy output of the bomber, Suche was not only not angry, but wanted to laugh a little. But the younger brother lying on the ground blinked his eyes. Don't care about the lives of those innocent people? We are the ones buried with the lives of ordinary people, aren't we? Boss, we are the villains. Could it be that in the legend, the villain complains first? Even though he is a villain, he justly accused superhero of not caring about the lives of ordinary people. Why do you feel so awkward? Forcibly suppressing the desire to complain, this little brother obediently lay down on the ground and held his head. Well, let's strive for the good result of being arrested and put in prison. For a long time, whether it is Tony or Steve, after encountering a situation, they will tell the enemy that they have the Silver Moon Knight Suche. Looking at the red-eyed bomber who looks like a mad dog, but has a stern look, Suche walked forward and said, "But, the Avengers have always been a team. Whoever a team member has difficulties, then others will choose to help without hesitation. Don't come here. If I come here again, I will detonate it directly, and I will really blow up those innocent people." Seeing Suche walking towards him step by step, it seemed that every step seemed to step on his heart, making his heart tremble continuously. The bomber held the bomb detonator on his arm and tried to threaten. Facing such a powerless threat, Su Che didn't care for a moment at all. From the moment I came in, you should know the result. Although I agree with both Steve and Tony, they have me. But actually, I still have them. As soon as the words fell, Su Che's hot gaze cut off the bomber's arm without any hesitation. With the painful wailing of the bomber, the broken arm fell directly to the ground. The connected detonator also buzzed in an instant. It's just that the bomber expected, but the shocking explosion in New York did not happen. When he came to the bomber who was clutching his severed arm and was in pain, Su Che looked directly at him. As I said, I also have family and friends, so I never accept any threats. As the voice fell, the hot gaze instantly pierced the bomber's head. The bomber, who was howling in pain, turned his head into crushed watermelon juice, and then fell powerlessly to the ground. Seaside. Boom. A huge explosion sounded, and the originally calm sea directly rippled layer upon layer. Watching the sea surface tens of miles away, there was a wave of fluctuations, and even the seawater was blown out into sprays tens of meters high. Pietro stood by the sea, pinched his waist, and said to Tony Stark in the headset, "It's done, but the steel robot who was waiting for me at the seaside, and then went straight to the sea with 30 bombs, seems to have been bombed. Broken. It doesn't matter, it's just a battle armor." In the laboratory, listening to Pietro's words, Tony Stark said indifferently, "He still has a lot of armor, losing one is not a big deal." Listen to Tony Stark's answer. Pietro shrugged his shoulders, took off his earphones and cursed a big dog. The whole person disappeared on the deserted beach in an instant. Well, my brother-in-law explained his matter, and he has solved it perfectly. Now gotta get back to work. Lawyer Matthew took over a case some time ago, and I heard that the third court session will be held this afternoon. Such a good opportunity to observe, I can't easily miss it. As for what Tony Stark said, do yourself a favor to reduce resistance, and see if you can try a battlesuit that exceeds the speed of light like the Flash in the comics. Regarding this, Pietro felt that it was better for him to listen to his brother-in-law. After all, my sister Wanda never agreed to join the Avengers Alliance reserve team, let alone join the Avengers. But having said that, even if there is a battlesuit that can reduce drag and increase some power, Pietro felt that it was difficult for him to exceed the speed of light. After all, the Flash Barry, that's just a character that exists in the comics. Although, I have a little bit of expectation for the battlesuit that Tony Stark said. Just like Dr. Banner's pants, who would have thought to wear those Tony developed pants? When Dr. Banner turned into Hulk, he didn't even break through. Superhero awe. It's really exciting. But do as the old lady said, becoming a lawyer is also a very good choice. Forget it. As long as my sister is happy. After all, I am obviously an older brother, but now I have become younger brothers. In the lab. Receive. Hearing Su Che's voice from the headset, Tiff replied that he had received it. Then he smiled at Tony Stark and said, Su completely eliminated the bomber, but he didn't kill the younger brother who fell on the ground and surrendered when he saw Su. Also, the situation in that warehouse is quite dire, so Su asked me to take the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. to clean up the scene. Having said that, Steve hesitated a bit. Tried to talk a few times, but watched Tony look at him strangely. In the end, Bucky didn't say anything about Wakanda. Forget it. Let's talk about this matter after I have thought it through thoroughly. 3 days. It only took 3 days to eliminate the bombers who threatened our lives and planted bombs in New York. This is the guarantee of the Silver Moon Knight. I absolutely love Silver Moon Knight, we can trust him forever. God. Praise Silver Moon Knight, I knew Su would be able to save us. Whether it's aliens or supervillains, come on, we have the great Silver Moon Knight, we are not afraid of you. The bombers have been eradicated, and the bombs installed in every corner of New York have also been dismantled, and the masses no longer have to worry about being threatened once the news spreads. All the residents of New York breathed a sigh of relief, and immediately interviewed them on the internet or on the street. These residents who have experienced chaos and panic have given unparalleled praise to the superhero who protects them. No one knows how many people went to other cities during these 3 days. Even some timid people left this country. No one knows, since the bomber posted a video on the internet saying that 30 bombs were hidden in New York. They don't even dare to go to work, go to school, or go shopping. There were 14 to 23 bombings in the past, and everyone was worried that they would be implicated and killed by the explosions. But now, none of that matters. The great Silver Moon Knight, the superhero who led the Avengers to save the Earth, has saved them again. That's enough. All of a sudden, the praise of Su Che in New York almost reached its peak. It is not difficult to see from Ta Hualin Cafe. Everyone knew that this coffee shop was opened by the Silver Moon Knight who saved them and protected them. Therefore, the waiters in the Ta Hualin Cafe are almost crazy busy at the moment. Since the boss got a large sum of money from nowhere, the coffee shop could originally accommodate about 100 people. It has also been expanded into a super cafe that can accommodate at least 500 people. And even the number of waiters on the day shift has increased to 20. But even so, the waiter at Ta Hualan Cafe was a little distressed. Too busy, not too busy at all. Especially this time after the boss got rid of the bombers and saved them again. The traffic of Ta Hualan Cafe copyright is almost too numerous to count. Oh my god, not to mention the 500 seats are full, there are still a lot of people queuing outside? Can't they come in batches, or come every few days? You must know that the security personnel of Stark Industry on the opposite side have complained more than once. It's just across the street, and you can walk there in a minute, but you have to wait in line for more than half an hour to buy a cup of coffee. Oh my god, you're going to be busy soon, okay? Fortunately, the boss is generous, and the hourly salary he gives is double that of other cafes. In addition, the store manager Selena will specially adjust the working hours to help them reduce their workload in the form of shift changes. Forget it, you can get more salary anyway, and still work for superhero. If you say it, your companions will be envious. It's a pity that since Ta Hualan Cafe copyright was expanded, the number of visits by the boss has decreased a lot. Seeing the boss almost once a few days. I heard from the first batch of waiters who worked here that the boss would come over every morning at that time to drink a cup of black coffee without sugar. Hey, what a pity. Otherwise, as a coffee shop in Ta Hualan, ask the boss for an autograph, or post a group photo on the internet to increase some clicks. The boss will never refuse, okay. But yes, my boss is a superhero after all, the recognized soul of Avengers. So he must be very busy, maybe somewhere in the world right now, destroying super evil forces or villains who threaten the earth. What is Suche doing right now? Maybe it's different from what the waiters at Ta Hualan Cafe thought. At this moment, Suche is not fighting supervillains, nor is he destroying some evil organization. Instead, at the Avengers Alliance base, members of the Avengers Alliance reserve team are being trained. Cooperation. We must pay attention to cooperation, this is very important. Looking at Wanda, Rhodes, and Sam who are training and grinding. While using psychokinesis to interfere with them, Suche said, the premise of perfect cooperation is to understand the abilities between teammates. Only with your mutual ability, character, and even fighting style, can you effectively bring out the greatest power of the team. Definitely, it is unrealistic for you to reach the level of perfect teamwork now. But that's okay, it's still a while before aliens invade Earth, or supervillains want to destroy the world. As soon as Suche psychokinesis was launched, Rhodes, who was flying in the air, hit the psychokinesis barrier directly. Boom. Rhodes, who was inexplicably blocked by the air wall, almost lost control of the armor. Fortunately, Wanda on the ground used crimson magic to support Rhodes. Very well. Always pay attention to the position and movement of your teammates, so that you can lend a helping hand when your teammates are in danger. In addition, Sam, since you, like Rhodes, can use equipment to fly in the air, then what you have to do is not just aerial reconnaissance and support firepower. It is also necessary to report the location of teammates at any time, the route of the enemy's attack, unexpected situations that occurred during the battle, and whether teammates are in danger, etc. While talking, Suche continued to use psychokinesis to interfere with them. Not long after, a Kun-style fighter flew over from a distance, and then slowly landed on the ground. As the Quinjet fell down, Suche waved his hand, indicating that their training could stop. When the door to the pilot position of the Quinjet fighter was opened, Natasha Romanoff, carrying a backpack, stepped down from the fighter plane. Seeing that Natasha Romanoff came back, Tien laughed and ran forward to give Natasha Romanoff a big hug. Although now I have grown up, 18 years old, I no longer need a guardian. But for Natasha Romanoff, her sister who has been her guardian since she was 14. Wanda is still very close. Laughing and hugging Wanda for a while, whispered two questions in Wanda's ear. Looking at Wanda's expression, although she didn't answer, Natasha Romanoff already knew the answer. It's a pity that there is no baby yet, otherwise I can be a godmother again. Welcome back. Coming to Natasha Romanoff, and taking the package from her hand, Suche stretched out his arms to hug Natasha Romanoff, and then said with a smile, "Nah, it seems that this vacation time is not as wonderful as imagined. There is no trace of tanning at all, come on." Hearing that Suche started to tease when they met, Natasha Romanoff smiled and gave him a blank look. "I carry several bottles of sunscreen with me, the only pity is that I can't wipe my back." "How are they training?" Leaving the training ground, I looked at Wanda who was very intimate with my arm. Natasha Romanoff smiled, then turned to Suche and asked. "It's still far from being formed, but maybe if we conduct cooperative training with other members of the Avengers Alliance, maybe the tacit understanding can be improved a bit." But the question is, who has time for them to train together? While walking, Su-che said with emotion, to be honest, it's not easy for us people to live an ordinary life. Now, Steve is still working in the S.H.I.E.L.D. operation team, and it is estimated that he may not leave S.H.I.E.L.D. until the strength of S.H.I.E.L.D. is fully restored. Tony's mental pressure has been increasing recently, so after the matter of the bomber was resolved, he took Dr. Banner to study the psychic scepter together, and wanted to install a layer of war on the Earth. Thor and Barton are very relaxed. One shoots covers for many magazines to make money and wants to save money to travel around the world. The other stays with his wife and daughter who is not yet 1 year old. Speaking of this, Su-che spread his hands. So, the matter of training the three of them fell on me. However, I don't have any opinions. As I said, maybe it won't be long before we face an even more threatening enemy. So before that, let them continue to enjoy this rare and peaceful life. Listening to Su-che's words, Natasha Romanoff nodded. I'm interested, but since I'm back, leave the rest of the training to me. What will they use next? It's mainly Sam and Rhodes. In the face of Natasha Romanoff, Su-che did not hide it. Wanda has been with us since she was 14 years old, and she is very familiar with the personality, abilities, and fighting methods of every member in the Avengers Alliance. So Wanda doesn't have to participate in the next run in training. But Sam and Rhodes, besides you, should also let Steve come over backquote. Steve? After thinking about it, Natasha Romanoff nodded. Also, Steve has a wealth of combat experience, and he and I designed some targeted training so that Sam and Rhodes can quickly get familiar with it and join our ministers. Having said that, Natasha Romanoff looked at Su-che suspiciously. Why'd I always feel that you did it on purpose about the bomber? I was on vacation when I heard the news, and the first thing I thought was that you were the indulgent one. But having said that, if you say that it will be resolved in 3 days, it will be resolved in 3 days. If you don't delay for one more day, the reputation of the Avengers Alliance will be completely established by you, and the reputation of the Avengers Alliance among the people will also be improved. But anyway, I think you did it on purpose. Listening to Natasha Romanoff's words, Wanda looked at her boyfriend curiously. How do you feel that Sister Natasha Romanoff knows her boyfriend better than herself? That's right. Although I and my boyfriend have already met each other frankly, after all, Sister Natasha Romanoff is the first person in the Avengers Alliance to know her boyfriend. So it is necessary to know something. I really can't hide anything from you. Looking at Natasha Romanoff's suspicious eyes, Su-che said with a smile. Before the bomber operation, Nick Fury secretly sent me a document, which is about the Superhero Agreement and Registration Act. Steve and Tony and I mentioned it consciously or unintentionally, but the reaction of these two guys is really good. At least they don't agree to this superhero agreement. After Nick Fury sent me this agreement, I was thinking about how to solve this matter. Who knew that the bomber actually appeared? Hey, what a chance to improve our reputation. If we miss it, maybe the World Security Council will coerce us. You know, the current S.H.I.E.L.D. has not yet recovered its full body. Although it can compete with the Congress, it doesn't have much to do with the World Security Council. So before that, we need to take on this pressure ourselves. Superhero Agreement. I heard Su-che mention this name, although I don't understand this so-called superhero agreement. But according to Su-che's tone and Steve Tony's objections, Natasha Romanoff can probably guess more or less. So, the matter of the bomber, is it a scene played by Tony and Steve with you? The audience is those people from the World Security Council? No, Tony and Steve don't know, at least they don't know about the bomber. Looking at Natasha Romanoff, Su-che smiled and said, it's better for Nick Fury and I to deal with this kind of face staining. At least for now, on the basis of the original reputation, we will once again raise the reputation of the Avengers Alliance among the people. Nick Fury can also return this superhero deal. Speaking of this, Su-che stopped and looked at Natasha Romanoff. Nah, although our Avengers Alliance has a high reputation all over the world, sometimes people are the most forgetful. Especially with a team of powerful super abilities like ours, how could the World Security Council let go so easily? Hearing what Su-che said, Natasha Romanoff thought for a while and didn't ask any more questions. For Su-che, Natasha Romanoff still has a very high level of trust. When it comes to the level of trust, I have to bring up Nick Fury, a black brine egg, to flog the corpse. 73% motionless, damn it, F*K Shaw. S.H.I.E.L.D. interrogation room. I just said that exposing our position to the Silver Moon Knight is a very stupid act, but my boss doesn't listen to me. I always say that I have no brains, and that I have a bomb detonator and a dozen super ability users transferred from the organization, so there is no need to worry at all. It's all right now, the boss's head has turned into a broken watermelon, and those so-called super ability users who have obtained it have all been killed. If the boss had supported me back then, he would have escaped after saving Alan West. there are still things going on there. Always say I have no brains. Always let me read Batman's comics. He doesn't even have watercolors on his face. What a joker. The Silver Moon Knight is Superman, not Bruce Wayne. How can there be no bottom line? Hearing that the little brother who was arrested has never stopped talking since he came in. He kept talking non-stop. Steve sat opposite him, across the interrogation table, feeling like his patience was going to run out. You know, just ask for a name. Really, I just asked what his name was just now. In the end, 10 minutes, a full 10 minutes, this guy's mouth just kept on talking 10 times. God, was he a machine gun in his last life? Shut up. Listening to the bomber's little brother, his mouth was like a machine gun without stopping. Even Steve, always patient, couldn't help telling him to shut up. So talkative, this guy is so talkative. No room for others to speak at all. Hearing Steve Rogers shut himself up, the bomber's younger brother stared at Steve in disbelief. He couldn't believe that this sentence came from the captain of the country. And when he was beside the boss Mark always shut himself up. Now that the boss is dead, Captain America has shut himself up again. Didn't the boss die in vain? Now I ask a question, you say a question. If you don't ask, you don't talk too much. As he spoke, Steve turned on the surveillance and video recorder again. You and that bomber did the 23 bombings, do you admit that? Definitely admit it. Now that I've been arrested by you, why not admit it? 23 bombings were brought under control. Do the people with backpacks with bombs have a clear understanding? How is it possible? If there is knowledge, no one is so stupid as to walk into a restaurant or shopping mall with a backpack containing a bomb. It's actually very simple, because I planted an imprint in their hearts. Normally, they will be like ordinary people, but as long as they hear a special piece of music, they will lose their autonomy and listen to us. Definitely, during this process they will show negative emotions such as extreme hunger and exhaustion, but these are actually not true. Speaking of this, the younger brother instantly became excited. Speaking of this, in fact, all of this comes from the experiment on the operating table. God. My boss violated the rules of the organization, although the organization exempted my boss from the death penalty because he has worked for them for more than 10 years. But according to the rules, you have to accept the human body transformation experiment, and I was worried that my boss would not be able to get off the test bench, so I took the initiative to participate in this transformation experiment for my boss. As you can see, I am only 1.6 meters tall with my shoes on. You know, I used to be nearly 19. However, after losing my height, I still have the ability to control others, although this ability cannot completely control a person. It can only be like what I just said, leaving a mark in the hearts of others, and I can't do anything about people with firmer minds. I can't control even ordinary people who have received some training, but you can see that the guys responsible for the 23 bombings were all ordinary people. They. Hearing the little boy start to rave again, Steve knocked on the table to signal him to shut up. What is the name of your organization? Where is the exact location? Looking at the little brother, Steve asked with a serious face. Obviously, it might really be what Sue said. This organization is similar in nature to the Hydra base in Sokovia. Even more threatening than Sokoa's Hydra, inside Nick Fury's office. Watching Steve's interrogation video, Nick Fury directly intercepted a section and sent it to Maria Hill, who was sitting opposite him. Share the video and publish it. Share the video, it should be able to calm down this incident. Listening to Nick Fury's words, Maria Hill nodded. Okay, but Nick, which side of the World Security Council's agreement on the Superhero Registration Act? I think it's actually reject. Don't have any hesitation. Before Hill finished speaking, Nick Fury said very seriously. Avengers must maintain absolute independence and absolute autonomy. Once someone wants to control or gather the Avengers under his command, the nature of Avengers will change. This is not in line with the original intention of the establishment of the Avengers Alliance, and it is putting a layer of chains on the feet of the Avengers Alliance members. There may be no problems at the beginning, but if time passes, the nature will inevitably change, and maybe the Avengers Alliance will be directly in a state of splitting. So, Avengers doesn't need to obey anyone's orders, let alone be under the control of any organization. Even if it is the World Security Council, it will definitely not work. Watching Nick Fury allow himself to dismiss proposals for a World Security Council without hesitation. Maria Hill felt inexplicably, did Nick Fury think too much? At least, after the Avengers Alliance has an organization on the World Security Council, Hill feels that the Avengers Alliance will become more formal and have more benefits. But look at the rare seriousness of Nick Fury. Even when they wiped out Hydra in S.H.I.E.L.D., they didn't have such a serious expression. Hill nodded, indicating that he understood. She would reject the World Security Council proposal for the Superhero Registration Act for Nick Fury. Although, Hill still believes that if the Avengers alliance is backed by the World Security Council, it will gain more benefits. After watching Hill leave, Nick Fury took out his phone and sent Su-Che a text message. Unbeknownst to others, the Avengers will be torn apart because of the Superhero Registration Act. Nick Fury is very clear. Although, the real reason for the Avengers Alliance's civil strife and division was the killing of Tony's parents by Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes. But Nick Fury is too aware of the style of the big bosses of the World Security Council. It may not matter in the early stage, but after a long time, don't even think about it. The Avengers Alliance signed by compromise will definitely become a private army under their command. This kind of thing is extremely unwilling to see Nick Fury. But having said that, as recorded in the Black Gold Diary, the reason for the civil strife in the Avengers Alliance was that Steve knew ahead of Tony that the Winter Soldier had chosen to hide the killing of Howard Stark and his wife from Tony. So what now? When I ordered the elimination of Hydra in S.H.I.E.L.D., I deliberately let Tony Stark see that video. Let him know earlier than Steve Rogers that Tong Bing is the murderer of his parents. So, will the Avengers Alliance still have civil strife in this life? Thinking, Nick Fury leaned back on the chair and thought, maybe, I should talk to Steve. How do you feel that apart from Sue and Clint, Natasha Romanoff is all problem children in the Avengers Alliance? Thinking of this, Nick Fury took out the Black Gold Diary and flipped through it. Ready to see if Su-Che has updated his diary recently. Well, whenever Nick Fury is upset, flipping through the Black Gold Diary has become a habitual thing for him. Mr. Thor, please hold Mjolnir up. Okay, keep it like this. Perfect, Mr. Thor, please do a cool move. Nice. Accompanied by the sound of the shutter clicking, after taking the photo he wanted, the photographer gave Thor a thumbs up. It's perfect, Mr. Thor. I have to say that you are better than him in terms of figure and temperament. Those Hollywood stars are perfect. Hearing the photographer's praise, Thor smiled, and the person in charge of the magazine also came over and greeted Thor. After the pleasantries, wait until the fee hits the account Tony set up for Thor. Thor was just about to call it a day. The filming is over. Jane Foster walked over, tiptoeing and tidying up Thor's collar very intimately. Not to mention, the magazines sold out a while ago were going crazy, and I struggled so hard to get them to Japan. Sure enough, the sales volume of the magazine with your cover is very high. I've heard that countless people on the internet now want you and the whole Avengers to shoot a magazine issue or do an interview. Listening to Jane Foster joke in front of me, Thor turned the hammer into an umbrella and said with a smile, let's forget it, in the Avengers Alliance, that guy Tony is not short of money, so he definitely won't come to shoot magazines. Steve doesn't like this kind of thing too much either. According to him, the experience of being on stage 70 years ago made him feel terrible. Sue has the Ta Hualin Cafe, and he completed a deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. some time ago. Dr. Banner is very low-key, trying his best not to draw attention. As for Natasha Romanoff and Clint, they won't be doing interviews. Having said that, Thor looked at Jane Foster with a smile and asked, Jane, have you finished your work today? Almost. The rest of the finishing touches that are not too tricky, I will leave it to Daisy to do. After all, you can't keep rejecting your date invitations because of work. Ha ha. Watching Jane Foster deliberately blinking and making one-liners, Thor laughed heartily. It's just that Jane Foster found that there seemed to be something wrong in Thor's smile. What's wrong? Looking at the front with some concern, this self-proclaimed 1,500-year-old, but in his own eyes, is still the same as the reliable, childlike Thor who has never grown up. Well, there are times when Thor really is like a child who hasn't grown up. But most of the time, he is really very reliable. Sorry, Jane, I probably won't be able to date you today. Putting away his smile, Thor looked at Jane Foster with a very serious expression. Today is the 4th anniversary of the death of Doris, and I will never miss this day every year. Is today the death day of Doris? Hearing Thor say this, Jane Foster remembered instantly. I and Thor have known each other for 4 years, and we have been together for more than 2 years. But even so, every year on this day, Thor will go to Doris's tombstone. Jane Foster knew that Thor had never forgotten that kind, lovely, gentle and understanding woman in his heart. Even if it's with himself, it's somewhere in the softest part of Thor's heart. But still has her place. As a girlfriend, Jane Foster should actually be jealous that her boyfriend has other women in his heart. However, this woman who has passed away and misses makes Jane Foster unable to arouse even the slightest bit of jealousy. After all, I know her. God testifies, she is so perfect, so gentle and kind. So even if Thor can't forget her all the time, Jane Foster still can't be jealous. There is even a trace of gratitude in my heart. Because of her appearance, Thor got rid of his original arrogance and recklessness, and let himself have a perfect boyfriend. And, Thor loves himself. I am very sure of this. Therefore, I will only cherish Thor's boyfriend even more. So she won't be jealous of Doris who has passed away. This is what a smart woman should do. Thinking of this, Jane Foster smiled and helped Thor tidy up his clothes. It's okay, go and see her, I think you should have a lot to say to her. Also, don't forget to buy a bouquet of lilies. Thank you, Jane. Listening to his girlfriend's words, Thor took Jane Foster's hand and said very sincerely. It should be me thanking her, because of her appearance, I have you. Arrange Thor's clothes, Jane Foster said very seriously. Half an hour later, in front of the monument, Thor took a bouquet of fan roses and placed it in front of the tombstone that he didn't even have a picture of. Jane asked me to bring a bouquet of lilies to see you, saying that this is what you should bring to commemorate the dead. But I know that your favorite is pink roses. Although you should also like lilies, I don't think it's better to bring your favorite. Putting Mjolnir's umbrella on the ground, Thor doesn't care if his pants get dirty. Sitting directly in front of Doris' tombstone. Raising his hand, he gently stroked the cold stone tablet in front of him. Suo Ran said slowly. Recently I have been doing well. I am still the superhero of the Earth, and I am still guarding your favorite Earth. Well, I'm also shooting magazines. Speaking of this, it's hard for people to understand. I just need to stand there and let someone take a few photos with a camera, and then I can get a lot of money. Odin, I never thought that there is such a simple way to make money. Haha, you have to know that when we were in that small town, I was on the construction site holding a hammer to dig the foundation. When I was digging the cement, my wages were not as much as a few photos. As he spoke, Thor took out a small bottle of wine from his pocket. Open the cork of the wine bottle, and slowly pour water on the muddy field in front of the cold tombstone. Watching the wine slowly seep into the soil, Thor just gulped down the rest of his drink. In the past 2 years, except for returning to Asgard, I have been staying on Earth every day. In addition to some tasks of the Avengers Alliance, more is to make money. You know Doris, I'm afraid it's hard for you to imagine that I've already saved nearly $900,000. Odin, $900,000, that's something we never thought about when we were together 4 years ago. If you are still alive, then we must be traveling all over the world now, admiring your favorite scenery around the Earth. Just. Taking a long breath, Thor shook his head mockingly. Seeing that there was no one around, he quietly pinched his sore eyes. It's just that now that you're not here, I obviously want to do it but I dare not do it. I'm afraid that after seeing every corner and every scene on the Earth, I will lose your greatest last wish. Oh, am I a coward? Taking a long breath, he gently rubbed his cheek against the cold tombstone. No one wants to believe that the thunder god from Asgard. But he laughed at himself as a coward. But at this moment, Thor, who put his cheek on the tombstone, looks like a child who lost his favorite toy. Frowning sadly, he spoke his thoughts to the water-cooled stone tablet. In the distance, inside a car. Sir, didn't we come here to evaluate the rookies who are about to graduate from Eagle's Nest? Looking at the Avengers member holding a telescope and watching through the one-way glass. Then from the chief of Thor, the god of thunder in Asgard. The assistant asked curiously, Sir, are we going to invite this Thor from Asgard to be the assessment target of those rookies? But having said that, recently this prince from Asgard, the domain of the gods, has gained a lot of limelight on Earth. Many magazines like to ask him to shoot the cover, and even some Hollywood movies want to ask him to be a guest. But he didn't take those movies, he just made money by shooting magazine covers. Listening to the assistant's inquiry, Doris slowly put down the telescope in her hand. With an unchanged expression, he said, just passing by, Chi will continue to assess those rookies. While talking, Doris started the car with a blank expression. The elimination rate increased by 20%, and the disability death rate increased by 7%. Now the rookies in Eagle's Nest are getting weaker and weaker each time. If this continues, S.H.I.E.L.D. will inevitably weaken. Listening to the chief's words, the assistant nodded. Just judging from the officer's expressionless attitude and cold tone. The assistant obviously noticed that his boss was obviously in a bad mood. For what? Is that the one coming? But if I remember correctly, my boss should be 3 to 4 days later than me, right? I didn't come by myself, so God, why? Is it because of that Thor? No way, did my boss have a relationship with Thor? Don't make random guesses. If you dare to guess again, I will send you to the desert in the Middle East, and let you guess hard. Hearing the boss's cold tone, the assistant stuck out his tongue quietly. As a student of the Eagle's Nest, he became the boss's assistant. She cherishes it very much, and the boss is the top psychologist and micro-expression expert in S.H.I.E.L.D. Guess what you can't hide from the boss? Hey. Just stop thinking about it. That's right, His boss has been in the eagle's nest, and he rarely even leaves the eagle's nest. How could it be possible to know each other with Thor, let alone have a relationship? Watching the assistant honestly start to look through the list of students who are about to graduate from Eagle's Nest this year. Doris drove the car out of the cemetery without any fluctuation in her eyes. The reason why I came here to take a look today is just a coincidence. You must know that in each Eagle's Nest student graduation assessment, I am just the one who set the questions. This year, none of this matters. The important thing is to let Thor think about the white moonlight that he can't forget for 4 years. It was Doris, the nurse worker in that small New Mexico town. Instead of myself, the general manager of S.H.I.E.L.D. Eagle's Nest, Doris, nicknamed Medusa. After all, people from two worlds, but having said that, Nick Fury is really getting worse and worse now. It doesn't matter if Hydra is eliminated in S.H.I.E.L.D. Let the Skrull who can become anyone join the Eagle's Nest for training. Hey, no matter how good their performance is, no matter how obedient they are. I also rejected Nick Fury's proposal without any hesitation. For non-Earth people, even aliens who have lost their homes and have no shelter and regard the Earth as their home. I will never trust myself 100%, so be it. Eagle's Nest will never allow aliens to join. At the same time, the research room of Tony Stark's beach house. I'm not sure what's going on with this, seeing that Tony actually took out a section of the artificial intelligence program intercepted from Hydra. Dr. Banner crossed his arms and said to Tony, even if you said, this is the artificial intelligence program that was intercepted when you helped S.H.I.E.L.D. eliminate their internal Hydra. And all Hydra instructions inside the program have been eliminated, thus becoming a new intelligent program. But really, I still can't believe it anymore. Tony, don't forget when you told me that my guy named Dr. La turned himself into a program and wrote it into the computer. So I'd rather, oh Kong Bruce, don't be so paranoid, will you? Listening to Dr. Banner's words, Tony Stark spread his hands and smiled. A program is just a program. There is no distinction between good and evil. What we have to do is to input the program into this body, instead of inputting Dr. Zola, who has been wiped out long ago, into this Man of Steel. Speaking of this, Tony Stark pointed to the psychic scepter next to him and said to Dr. Banner, Bruce, why don't I take a step back and not put the gem on the psychic scepter on the head of this Man of Steel? In this way, even if we can't control this program, we can destroy it at any time, right? But, once we succeed, it is equivalent to creating an extremely powerful robot with our own hands, an Asgardian who takes protecting the Earth as his own responsibility and is not afraid of life and death. With that said, Tony Stark patted Dr. Banner's shoulder, so buddy, I need your approval and help. At least, with this robot made of steel, we will have greater confidence in the next time we face an alien invasion. Isn't this the same purpose as our Avengers alliance? Believe me. Looking at Tony's swearing look, Dr. Banner hesitated for a moment, and then asked again. Are you sure you have written a rule for this artificial intelligence program? Definitely, otherwise, how can I transfer the consciousness of this program into the steel body I spent a lot of money to build? To protect the Earth and protect the safety of the Earth, this instruction is a program specially written by me. Pointing to the research cabin, at this moment, the steel iron body like a real person is made of aerospace technology materials. Tony Stark smiled at Dr. Banner. Don't worry, from this moment on, our Avengers will have the biggest hole card besides Sue. When those damned aliens invade the Earth again, the Earth will have no fear. There's something Tony Stark didn't say to Dr. Banner. That is, the guy who named himself Ultron wasn't just fighting aliens. It is also prepared for those guys from the parallel universe, or even the zombie universe. Recently, Tony has not been taking hallucinogens. It is not clear whether the disgusting and terrifying guys in the zombie universe have opened up the parallel universe that is on the verge of destruction. However, I always have to leave some backup for the world I live in. 3 days later, inside Tony's seaside villa. Tisk. The decoration is very warm. Tony, this is not your style. Entering the villa with Wanda in his arms, he saw the warm decoration of the party scene. Sue Che joked to Tony Stark. Why, this is trying to change the party into a family party, and then beg for Aunt with the oily one? Listening to Sue Che's words, Tony Stark responded with a middle finger, and then said in the same way, don't make fun of me, man, and be careful not to invite you when I marry Pepper in the future. But having said that, if you care about when Pepper and I get married, you might as well think about you and Wanda. As far as I know, Natasha Romanoff is looking forward to your and Wanda's baby now, so she can be a godmother. Godmother? What godmother? Clint, who came over with a wine glass, handed Sue Che a glass of wine. Just about to pass another glass of wine to Wanda. But after thinking about it, he still took his hand back. I almost forgot. Although Wanda's 18th birthday is over and she is an adult, She hasn't reached the age of 21 and 14 to drink alcohol. But what did you just say? What the F***K? Godmother. Seeing Barton's curious expression, Tony Stark laughed and repeated what he just said. Hey, why rush this kind of thing? Sue is only 24 years old this year, and Wanda is only 18 years old and a few months old. Why are you so anxious to have a baby so early? As soon as the words fell, Clint saw Wanda looking at him with a threatening look. Immediately, he changed the subject, but I think it's really good that Tony just said about the marriage. She-Da and Sue feel that they are a very good match. So I feel that the two of you can properly consider marriage matters. Watching Clint suddenly change the topic under the threat in Wanda's eyes, Tony Stark was instantly amused and burst out laughing. On the contrary, Wanda was very happy holding Suche's arm. Get married thinking of being able to marry her boyfriend whom she has loved for several years. Wanda feels that there is nothing happier than this. What are you laughing at? Thor and Steve on the side came over and looked at Tony, who was pointing at Clint and laughing. Asked curiously. And Wanda was also called by Natasha Romanoff and Pepper. It also happened to be a chance to meet Thor's girlfriend, Jane Foster. Watching Wanda leave and walk towards them, Clint breathed a sigh of relief, and raised his hand to wipe the sweat that didn't exist on his forehead. Then he looked at the crowd with his wineglass and said, I can't afford to provoke you, I really can't afford to provoke you. You know Wanda is treated like a sister by Natasha Romanoff, and Natasha Romanoff is not my daughter's godmother. Liven up the atmosphere by listening to Clint's deliberate explanations. Everyone smiled and toasted each other. But having said that, Tony, what is the purpose of your party at home this time? There must be a charter. After taking a sip of the wine, Hawkeye looked at Tony. You can't tell us to come here, it's just for drinking. Definitely not. Listening to Clint's inquiry, watching everyone focus on him, Tony Stark unbuttoned his shirt at his wrist. Then they called everyone over. Watching Natasha Romanoff, Pepper Jane Foster and others also came over. Tony Stark gestured for everyone to pick up their glasses. Well, it was Tony's party after all, so the person who said the toast would definitely be Tony. Everyone, the reason why the party is held today is actually to celebrate. First, celebrate Su's solution to the bomber, and strictly abide by the promise that 3 days will be 3 days, which has greatly improved the reputation of our entire Avengers Alliance team among the people. Well, anyway, countless people are worshipping us online now, thinking that we are the last guarantee of the Earth. Listening to Tony's toast, everyone raised their glasses and waited for Tony to continue. Secondly, it's also about celebrating that everyone is now able to come together, celebrate Natasha Romanoff's return from vacation, and most importantly, the birth of the first next generation of our Avengers Alliance. Having said that, Tony looked at Clint Barton. Dude, actually when your eldest daughter was born, I wanted to hold a party with everyone to congratulate you. It's just that the child was just born at that time, and your wife doesn't like to show up, and prefers to live freely on that farm. So, I waited until now to gather everyone to celebrate for you. Listening to Tony's very sincere congratulations, Barton nodded with a smile and thanked him. No way, his wife Laura used to be an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., the famous Mockingjay bird. So she doesn't like to show up very much. On the one hand, she is tired of the city life and prefers the slow life of the farm. Secondly, on that farm, some former enemies of the province came to the door. It can be regarded as a kind of protection, especially after the eldest daughter is born. Although now I have eliminated most of the enemies in the true sense of the physical nature. However, the wife has fully enjoyed life on the farm. So everyone, let's raise our glasses and give blessings to everyone in the Avengers Alliance, to our elf Prince Clint, and to Clint's daughter. As Tony's voice fell, everyone laughed and formed a circle and started clinking glasses, and then drank the wine in the glasses. Barton's daughter was born, and everyone naturally wanted to send their blessings. Even if Wanda is holding a glass of juice, even if Pietro wanted to secretly switch to drinks, he obediently picked up the juice after being glared at by Wanda. Even if the newly joined War Machine Rhodes and Sam are not so familiar with Barton. However, everyone present was really happy for Barton. Have the next generation. When the next generation rises, maybe the second generation of Avengers will inherit the abilities and responsibilities of their parents. Keep on guarding the world. Children are always the hope of this world. Everyone agrees with this. After drinking a glass of wine, Tony Stark picked up the bottle and poured everyone a glass one by one. But when he saw Pietro, who looked hopefully at his bottle with a juice glass in his hand, Tony thought for a while, then looked at Suche. Well, Pietro can be regarded as Sude's wife and brother. So Suche has the absolute right to speak in this regard. Have a drink. Putting his arms around Wanda's shoulders, Suche looked at Tony. Let Pietro taste the wine, even though Pietro is only 18, not yet old enough to drink. But who told us that we are not normal people? Hearing Suche's words, Tony Stark gained confidence. Even Wanda nods. Now that my husband has spoken, it's not a big deal to let my younger brother have a drink. But I know that Pietro often sneaks into his husband's villa and takes away the beer in the refrigerator. Hey. Although I am not married, I will call my husband sooner or later. Picking up the glass excitedly, he watched Tony Stark pour a glass of wine into his juice glass. Well, Pietro decided, from this moment on, he doesn't hate Tony Stark anymore. On the other hand, War Machine Rhodes faced Suche's words and laughed immediately. Actually, I think I'm a normal person. Well, at least me and Sam, Pepper and Ms. Jane Foster are normal people. Listening to Rhodes' words, everyone including Sam looked at Rhodes. Okay. I said the wrong thing. He raised his hands over his shoulders to signal surrender, indicating that he shouldn't have complained just now. But I really can't hold back. After refilling everyone with a second glass of wine, Tony Stark stretched out his hand and put his arm around Dr. Banner's shoulder. Everyone, apart from celebrating, the second thing is that I have prepared a surprise for everyone. Everyone present knows that the purpose of Avengers is to protect the Earth. Yes, in the last battle with Chitauri, we won, and we won very cleanly. But what about the next one? Looking at the crowd, Tony Stark held his glass and continued. I don't know if we will win the next battle against aliens. Maybe we will win, but we won't keep winning. So I have been thinking about how to install a layer of armor on the Earth to add a security guarantee to the Earth. Honestly, because of this incident, and the ramifications that happened with the hallucinogens, I had anxiety attacks during that time. I admit that it is very serious, and Pepper and Sue are in love with each other on this point. Listening to Tony say that he has anxiety disorder, there is a trace of worry on everyone's expression. Well, don't take it seriously, it's actually not a big deal, you see, I'm already healed now, aren't I? Facing everyone's worried expressions, Tony Stark said with a smile, but it is also thanks to this anxiety disorder that I came up with this idea. Everyone, it's right here, right under your feet. Made by me and Dr. Banner, the consciousness of the Super Iron Man is being transmitted. Once the consciousness is uploaded, then our Avengers will have an extra hole card, and the Earth will also have an extra guarantee. Everyone, let's raise our glasses together and celebrate the birth of a new superhero on Earth. Seeing Tony's high-spirited look, everyone raised their glasses and clinked again. After the drinks in the glasses are exhausted, everyone should take their seats. A joke that should be joked. Tony, what's up with your Super Iron Man? Sitting next to Tony, Steve asked curiously. Do you need me to make a glass of wine for you? When I was on vacation some time ago, I made a homemade wine and it felt pretty good. Natasha Romanoff, who turned into a bartender, looked at Suche and asked with a smile. Women, you should learn to take care of your skin. Let me introduce you to a cosmetic that has a particularly good moisturizing effect. This is Pepper holding Thor's girlfriend, Jane Foster, and imparting skincare tips. Wanda, who was attracted to the side, leaned over curiously, nodded constantly, as if opening the door to a new world of skincare. When my daughter was born, Laura and I were so happy. After the excitement passed, we realized that a baby who looks like Angel is actually very troublesome. Especially in the middle of the night, the baby's crying makes me sleepless, and she only stops crying when I hold her. Sometimes I even hugged for most of the night. Well, this is Barton holding Dr. Banner, talking happily about the troubles of being a parent after the baby is born. Alright. If there's anyone who's suffering the most, it's not Tony explaining Ultron. It wasn't Rhodes and Sam who were discussing Steve's new training subjects, thinking about how to pass quickly. The most distressing thing is definitely leaning on the sofa at this moment, listening to Barton chattering Dr. Banner in his ear. No, I'm a PhD in physics, although I have 7 degrees. But I don't know how to teach children. As long as the child is sensible or an adult, that's all. But now that the child is less than 1 year old, you have to discuss with me whether it is better for a girl to become a teacher or a doctor in the future. I'm not a girl, nor a doctor or a lawyer, how would I know that's good? And, Clint, can you please shut up? What about Barton, who used to speak less in the team? You give me back that trusty Barton. Alas, forget it. Barton also didn't know that because of the gamma rays, it would be best not to have a child of his own blood in this life. What else can I do but forgive him? But to be honest, I really envy Clint, who looks happy when he mentions children at the moment. After all, if given a choice, he would never choose Bruce Banner, who turns into a Hulk when he gets angry. Instead, he chose Bruce Banner, an ordinary man who only has 7 degrees and can have a complete family. Well, Hall Basement Research Room. As the network consciousness is constantly uploaded, It symbolizes that the energy body of consciousness is also constantly improving on the body made of high-tech materials. The percentage of data on the computer on the side increased rapidly. Obviously, Tony's experiment was about to happen. I don't know how long it has been. In the lobby. If you can't hold this Mjolnir, then it means you are not qualified to be Asgard. Leaning on the sofa, Thor looked at the crowd with a glass of wine and said with a smile, in other words, as long as you were recognized by Mjolnir, then you can pick up this hammer and become the king of Asgard. Listen to Thor's smug tone. Everyone present, except Jane Foster and Pepper, as well as Rhodes and Sam. Everyone else looked at Thor with weird eyes. Well, including Wanda and Pietro, among the people present. Steve was able to pick up the Mjolnir, so now after hearing Thor's words. Inexplicably, everyone felt a little unbearable. Ah, poor Thor. You may be the only one who doesn't know the whole Avengers, your Mjolnir has already been picked up by Steve. Tisk. Save some face for poor Thor. After all, Mjolnir, who is regarded as a treasure by Thor, has already been played many times in Steve's hands. Huh? Why do you feel that this sentence is a bit strange? Hey, why are you looking at me like that? It has just been said that whoever can lift Mjolnir shall be king of Asgard. Thor thought the crowd would be excited to try and lift the hammer. But who knew that after the voice fell, everyone looked at him with that weird look. What's wrong? Looking at the crowd for some unknown reason, Thor always felt that the eyes of these friends were weird. Well, he looked at Thor with a puzzled look on his face. Su Che deliberately sighed, then raised his hand with a sorrowful face and patted Thor's shoulder. Seeing this, Tony Stark also stood up, twitching Thor's shoulder with a mournful look. Among the members of the original Avengers alliance, except for Natasha Romanoff holding a bottle of beer, and Steve shaking his head and chuckling. Even Dr. Banner, who has always been very quiet and low-key, is afraid to express his condolences on Thor's shoulder. Walter. What happened? Thor, who was treated like this by everyone, was even more at a loss at the moment. It is said that this group of Earthlings are sick. Are they collectively stunned? Seeing Thor's bewildered expression, Steve still couldn't bear it, and just wanted to speak. But in the next second, there was a burst of piercing buzzing in the entire hall. Hiss. Tony, what's the situation? Listening to the piercing buzzing, everyone subconsciously covered their ears. The beeping stopped quickly, before everyone could ask Tony what happened. In the next second, the steel battlesuit and some steel robots in the display cabinet in the hall instantly broke through the glass cover and attacked everyone. Seeing this scene, Su Che instantly flew up from the sofa, and a hot line of sight smashed the steel robot rushing forward. Thor also subconsciously picked up the hammer and shielded it in front of the ladies. Su Che's powerful heat vision was simply not something these steel soldiers could resist. In an instant, the steel soldier in front of him was almost shattered. Road, be careful. Natasha Romanoff, who didn't know where to take out the pistol for the first time, saw a steel soldier on the right side of Rhodes rushing towards him. He immediately shot at the steel soldier. While shooting, he did not forget to drag Dr. Banner behind the sofa. Help me, buddy, don't turn into a big green guy, okay? Good. Seeing Natasha Romanoff brazenly holding a weapon, Dr. Banner hid behind the sofa and nodded, no problem. Captain, continue. He ran to the second floor to get the shield, watched Steve rush towards an iron soldier, and strangled the iron soldier's neck from behind as soon as he turned around. But the whole person was taken to the air on the second floor by the steel soldiers. Sam threw the shield at Steve immediately. After catching the shield with the help of the air, Steve spun and threw the shield while his body was falling, directly cutting off the steel soldier in half. Damn it, are you going to betray your father? Riding on the iron soldier, Tony formed the palm of the nano armor on his wrist, and then used the energy of his palm to crush the iron soldier in front of him. Turning his head, he saw Clint sticking a short arrow into the iron soldier's neck. The strong electric current at the tip of the arrow directly cut off the steel soldier's power system, and the entire steel body hit the stairs uncontrollably. Tony. Before Tony could turn his head, another man, Steve, suddenly called out to him. Turning his head subconsciously, he saw Steve throwing the shield at himself. He felt the sound of strong wind behind him. Tony's hand wearing the nano armor immediately caught the shield, then subconsciously squatted down and covered his head with the shield. Boom. The sound of heavy punches hitting the shield echoed in the hall. Use the shield to block the attack from behind. Tanya Stark then grabbed the shield and suddenly got up and smashed at the iron bump that was attacking him. The body of the steel soldier is very strong, but the shield is made of the hardest vibranium on the earth after all. So it easily chopped up the iron soldiers, but when he turned around, he found that the other two steel shrows rushed towards him without any hesitation. I really don't want to let your father Tony worry. Seeing the two steel soldiers rushing towards him, Tony Stark complained. Just prepared to cooperate with the palm energy cannon and shield, but the next second the two steel soldiers were caught in the air by a red energy. Then it was torn into pieces uncontrollably. Seeing this scene, Tony subconsciously looked at Wanda, who was casting crimson magic with both hands. You're welcome. Seeing Tony looking at herself, Wanda said something casually. Dozens of steel soldiers attacking at the same time is indeed a relatively big trouble. But in front of the Avengers alliance, where all members of the first generation were present, they were completely vulnerable. Crack. After crushing the last steel soldier with the heat sight, Su Che slowly fell from the air to the ground. What's the situation? A hammer smashed the head of the iron soldier, who kept repeating, not safe, in front of him. Thor came to the crowd with a hammer in his hand. It's really not safe. Glancing at the shards of iron soldiers all over the floor, Thor asked Tony, dude, is this the second surprise you prepared for us? Facing Thor's question, Tony Stark frowned and didn't know how to answer. Jarvis. Calling Jarvis, Tony really wanted to know if someone broke through his network defense system, and then controlled these steel armor and soldiers to attack himself and these people. Don't bark, it's already resting. A body is broken, and the upper body is emitting a sizzling blue electric current while reading the internal lines of various colors. But the steel soldier didn't care at all. Instead, he looked around, and then said, look at you, you are making such a big noise, and the originally peaceful room is in a mess. Is this how you're going to save the world? As he spoke, the broken steel soldier bent down. With one hand, he grabbed the head of a steel soldier who hadn't lost power, but kept repeating, unsafe, unsafe. Look what you guys are doing, saving the world, with these puppets of crap. Although I really don't want to do this, I just killed it, it's all your fault. Throwing the crushed robot head to the ground, the broken steel soldier grabbed a wire behind his head with his backhand and tore it off. From the very beginning, you made a mistake. To protect the peace of the earth, it is definitely not relying on you, or my bulky body. Constantly pulling the wires on his body, the steel soldier's footsteps began to become sloppy, as if he was drunk. The only way to protect the planet. Looking at the members of the Avengers alliance with a broken head, this broken steel soldier has no hesitation. Destroy the Avengers.